Welcome on into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, John Saber here with you. Been with you all week as the guys enjoy a little spring break, having some time with the fam, rest and relaxation. They'll be back with you Monday, ready to dive into, well, we'll be the preview for the Final Four. Because we get the Sweet 16, Elite 8 this weekend. Of course, Alabama gets things started today with their matchup with BYU. And, the closer we get the tip off, and we've been marinating all week long of just, it's starting to feel like Alabama is hitting their stride at the right time of all the question marks that you really had. They're on the back stretch of the season to wrap up the season. You get a big win over your arch rival, Auburn at that time. SEC tournament, you get one win, you end up losing two, which now eventually ended up being the SEC tournament champions in Florida. And so far through two games in the tournament, you had a little bit of a rocky start with Robert Morris, but you started to see glimpses of them starting to turn things around against St. Mary's. And something that's really been prevalent now is the big men are getting involved, and Alabama's starting to find other avenues and other ways to win ball games. And I think that you always can go back to the 3-point shot. You can have the fast pace, but when your bigs are getting active on both sides of the floor, and Grant Nelson, even if he's not at 100%, playing his absolute tail off, 2 games into the tournament so far, it just feels like this isn't the ideal matchup for BYU. Not to say that they couldn't pull off an upset, but it just doesn't feel like this version of Alabama that they're playing or they're going to play today matches up well with them on the basketball front.
No, and we were just talking about this on Morning Jocks, and I said this, and I mean it in the sense that BYU is the best team that Alabama's played in terms of they're obviously very talented. They had a good season in the Big 12, but in terms of the matchup, it's maybe the easiest matchup that you've had if you're Alabama, really in a while. Maybe going back to the first game you played in the SEC tournament, just in the sense that BYU is going to play a very similar style of basketball to what you are. It's not going to be like St. Mary's where it's a complete polar opposite situation and you're forcing the matter and trying to impose your will. You're still trying to do that against BYU, but I think going into the game, you just have a different level of comfort if you're Alabama of knowing we're going to be able to operate the way that we have all season long. And this is the kind of team that while they can keep up with us on the scoring end, because BYU is the number one offensive team in the country since the middle of February. So they're playing as good as anybody on that side of the ball right now. But if you're Alabama, you're sitting there going, all right, this is the most comfortable matchup that we've had. We're long overdue for, maybe a Mark Sears offensive explosion and the sense of him and his shooting percentage, particularly with the 3-ball. You look at a guy like LeBaron Philon, who has had sparks at times. And again, I go back to the first game of the SEC tournament where he was absolutely incredible. Are you going to get more of a scoring output from him? Can you get more consistency from Youngblood, who is really big in the St. Mary's game? Can you get more from him? And, if you're Alabama, I think you're going into this game where maybe none of those things happen for you, but you feel like your best basketball is still ahead of you. And hearing from Nate Oates, and we'll hear from him a little later in the show, but, hearing from Nate Oates yesterday and essentially this is as healthy as the team's going to be the rest of the way. Grant Nelson, still not at 100%. He said he's probably about 90%, but most players are probably at about 90%, if that, at this point in the season, just because it's been such a grind, especially in the SEC. But, even hearing from some of the players yesterday and hearing, Grant Nelson say, we still have a big ways to go defensively in the sense that we know that our ceiling of what we can bring to the table and how we can play defensively, we still haven't gotten there yet. And so knowing that, this team understands that, it was great to get through the first weekend, but this is a game that we shouldn't lose, and knowing that their best basketball still hasn't been played in the postseason. If that is tonight for Alabama, then I don't think BYU is going to pose much of a threat for them. But on the other hand, if you're not able to shoot the ball very well tonight, BYU is more than capable of running up the numbers and giving Alabama some problems. So it's certainly going to be a tough game for them. But I think just from a comfort level going in, if you're Alabama, this is probably the most comfortable you felt in any of these NCAA tournament games, that you can just go and play your brand of basketball. And as long as you're able to do that, you should be okay.
And I think for Alabama as well, the winner of this game, you're getting either Arizona or Duke, and two teams that, one, if you look at Duke through the first two games of the tournament, they've looked like the most dominant number one seed. And, I know Auburn as the overall number one, you still kind of feel not necessarily let down, but kind of uneasy because you really haven't put it together, but you found ways to win. Whereas Duke, the first two games of the NCAA tournament, they just completely rolled over those guys. And for a matchup, coming off a game against Baylor, and it's no disrespect to Baylor, like Baylor was a good basketball team. Like coming in as an 8 seed, it's okay. Well, they're a good enough team to make it interesting, but you still end up losing by 23 points. And I think, of course, Cooper Flagg in the discussion of, player of the year, even as a freshman, it feels like he's a man amongst boys. But I think that when you look at, in Alabama, if they get past a BYU of what they could potentially see, and you look at, Arizona with Caleb Love, like they know there's no more just easier win. Not to say BYU is an easy win, but like the path is only going to get more difficult the deeper that you go because of the teams that are left in the field. So it's okay, even if they haven't reached their potential or they haven't reached to where they could really see themselves being, it's good that they're still chasing it, but also you want to at least have a little bit of a glimpse of, okay, if how close are we from putting it all together?
Yeah, well, and I think that's a very good point. I think that's a large part of what people are looking for, right? Is it's not, yes, BYU can beat you. I'm not saying that Alabama can just roll the ball there and win, because they absolutely cannot. This is going to be a tough game, but you're looking at this game as, okay, we should be able to take care of business here, but you want to have the confidence that, if you win ugly in this game and you're not shooting the ball well, and maybe, defensively you step up a little bit and that's what leads you to a victory. Okay, that's great. But I think the fan base is more so looking for, they want the confidence that you can go and play a Duke team and beat them.
Yep.
And you want to see that against BYU to have a good feeling about going into the weekend of, oh, okay, we are playing that version of Alabama that we saw against BYU on Thursday. That's the version of Alabama that you look at times and go, oh, they could beat any team in the country, because there have been games this year where if you watched Alabama, it was probably hard not to think maybe not, oh, they're by far the best team in the country, but that team right there, if they play at that level, can win an NCAA tournament. And I think that's, almost, not saying that's like half of the battle tonight, but I do think in the back of a lot of Alabama fans' minds, that's what you're looking for, right? You're not looking so much for the win tonight as you are looking to get past BYU with the confidence that the team you see on the court tonight can take down Duke this weekend. And maybe it's Arizona on that side, but, I think with what we've seen from Duke for the first couple of games, it's going to be a tall task for Arizona tonight to get past them. But yeah, this is a good opportunity to start building that confidence and getting that confidence back. And, like we were talking about earlier this morning, it's just for guys like Mark Sears, man, you never know what can happen. You see a couple shots go in early in a basketball game, and that can, set you off running for the rest of the tournament. So that would be, tonight would be a good time for that.
Right. And then when you look on the other side of the bracket, when you look at Maryland and Florida getting set right after Alabama tips off there at 6:30 on TBS, Florida feels like the team of, I'm not going to say destiny, but they feel like they're the most complete, where, yes, they've been battle tested through the season, the gauntlet of the SEC. They win the SEC tournament. And coming into the NCAA tournament, it feels as though this was the team that was peaking at the absolute right time. And all of their playmakers, they're healthy. They're starting to get 100%. And you see the development of, Cogden. You see what Walter Clayton Jr. has been. And you feel as though that test from UConn almost just lit a fire, essentially just woke Florida up of, hey, we can't just roll this thing out here and expect to win ball games. And the last 3 or 4 minutes of that game, you started to see Florida put it all together. It was like, okay, we put ourselves in this hole. Now let's dig ourselves out of it. And it goes off the back of what Walter Clayton Jr. does. I think what he provides for Florida, they know when they need a big shot, when they need clutch moments, he's done nothing but step up and it's like, give me the ball and let it go from here. And I think for Florida, one, that Todd Golden, he's done a great job there anyway. But the confidence that they play with, it feels as though later on in the season, while other teams were still having a few question marks here and there, Florida was on the opposite end of, No, we've had our rough stretches. Of course, that loss to Georgia early on. It's like, okay, from that point forward, they haven't looked back. And I think, no matter what Dan Hurley says about the referees and how that game was officiated and how it went, Florida fought back against the two-time defending national champions. And Dan Hurley is a great coach. And what Florida was able to do was just kind of will their way into it. That if you're Maryland, it's, okay, we had a buzzer beater to get here. We're riding off emotion. But it's hard for me to just truly look at Maryland and say, man, they could probably, find a way to do it. But it feels like it's more hopelessly optimistic than it is because of what Florida has done on their resume since pretty much the month of February, towards the tail end of February into March.
Yeah, and I think, the big question is, was the UConn game, was that more of a wake-up call for Florida, right, in the sense that was the reminder they needed that, okay, while we are playing like the best team in the country, or we have been, to end the season, once you get in the tournament, all bets are off. And so maybe that was kind of the shot in the arm that they needed to be, okay, yeah, we got to bring our A game every single time on the floor, and especially now that you're in the Sweet 16, you absolutely have to do that. But I still think, again, that wasn't a game where I walked away from it like I know some people did and went, oh, okay, maybe Florida, maybe they peaked too early, or maybe they just aren't the team that we thought they were. And I mean, again, I get it's UConn. It was a different UConn team this year, but it was a team that wasn't healthy for large parts of the season, without one of their better players in Liam McNeely for large chunks of the season. But they still got into the tournament as an 8 seed. They're the 2-time defending national champions. If anybody in the field knows how to operate in March, it's going to be that team. And, again, I understand it was a close game, but for it to be a tie game, then like that, it's an 8-point lead for Florida. Granted, UConn was able to then come back again, but, you could just see in those stretches where Florida was clearly the better team, and now going up against a Maryland team where I do think, Derek Queen is really, really good. Obviously, anybody that doesn't know him now does because of the buzzer beater. But that's a guy that's big-bodied. He's got a little thickness to him. Is that somebody that can take advantage of Florida's bigs where, they got some big dudes, but a lot of them are, they're kind of beanpoles down there for Florida. Right. And so is that an advantage that can go in Maryland's favor? And if you can work that in the paint, maybe that's your chance to success. But I mean, anytime in these types of games, right, there's a formula, right? You're going to have to shoot the ball well from three. You're not going to be able to turn the ball over. There's going to have to be an area of the game, whether it's rebounding, forcing Florida to turn the ball over more. You are going to have to carve out your path to victory if you're Maryland. And I do think it's going to be a really, really good game. But I still think, at least in my eyes, I'm not looking at Florida as, I have buyer's remorse on picking them to win the national championship after the UConn game. I just think that was, that's a really tough opponent to draw in the second round of a tournament when you're a 1 seed to have the 2-time defending national champions in your path. So, no, I mean, I think that's going to be another great game there. And I think, again, it's, kind of similar to the Alabama thing where, if you're a Florida fan, you're happy that you are where you are. But this game, you're the better team going in. And it's, all right, can we get the confidence back to where we're feeling the same way about this Florida team, going into the Elite Eight and potentially a Final Four weekend, the same way that we were feeling about them 2 weeks ago when they were running through the SEC tournament and when they had beaten Auburn earlier in the year and things like that. That's what you're looking for again. And I think that, that applies to Auburn fans as well. And a lot of these teams is you've seen your team at their best, right? You've seen what they're capable of at their best. And you're now just hoping that that's going to come out at this point in the tournament, because this is where you absolutely need to be able to turn it on. And we know all these teams are capable of doing that. It's just a matter of if they will tonight and tomorrow. Yeah. And then the final game tonight, the nightcap between Texas Tech and Arkansas. Arkansas literally playing with house money at this point, the only double-digit seed represented in the Sweet 16, a team that literally has just overcome a tremendous amount of adversity early on. And now the more I look back on it, the regular season, we've seen great Arkansas, we've seen good Arkansas, then we've seen just absolutely horrible Arkansas. And now they're starting to turn it on at the exact moment you need to and find themselves here in the Sweet 16. This Arkansas team has beaten another team that's in the Sweet 16 in Kentucky. Went to Rupp Arena and beat them. So it's okay. So are we truly surprised that they're in this position? Do we feel confident? Because again, this is also a team that lost to South Carolina. That's the worst loss you could possibly have in the SEC.
they have a loss to South Carolina, and you would hate for some of those old habits to to reappear. But also, they're finally 100%. Well, they're close to 100% health wise. You got guys coming back from injury, and even going back to that St. John's game, it wasn't the prettiest, but they found a way to do it. They just found a way to win. And if you're Texas Tech, even sitting as a number 3 seed and one of the better teams in the Big 12, you're kind of looking over your shoulder a little bit of, okay, like, man, which Arkansas are we going to get on the other side? And also, if we don't play our A game, they can beat us up physically. Like Arkansas has the luxury of, one, they're not really expected to be here in year one under Coach Cal, but since they're here, they're like, we might as well make a run out of this thing. And like the confidence that they play with of it doesn't matter if we have to score 80 or we got to score 50. Either way it goes, we feel confident that we can win this ball game.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is Arkansas's they're not your typical number 10 seed, right? Just in the sense that, by some reports, they have the most expensive roster in college basketball this year with what they had to fork out in NIL to put together that team after, making the move to Coach Cal, on top of the fact that, what they had to go through in the SEC this year. That's a team that in a lot of other conferences, their record would be a lot better than what it was just by nature of playing in such a difficult conference. And so, yeah, I think if you're Arkansas, you have the number 10 next to your name, but I think we all understand that they are playing at a much better level than that. And a lot of it is, they had to dig themselves out of such a deep hole from where they started in the season that, to even climb back and get to the tournament itself was quite an accomplishment. Now here they are, and you've seen this team really come together. And, with Boogie Flan coming back for the NCAA tournament, he's been massive. You're going to get Thero back for 15 or so minutes tonight. So that can be big, especially what he brings you on the defensive end, on top of averaging over 15 points a game for you this year. So, it's going to be tough. Like Texas Tech's very good, right? Toppin's one of the better players in all of college basketball. They're certainly going to have their hands full. But, at this point, the strength of the SEC has gotten us this far. And, maybe this is a case where, you have a team that runs out of gas and has exceeded expectations. And we're going to see that. Rear its ugly head. But I also look at it as, you beat a Kansas team that I understand based on their seeding, but they were the number 1 team in the country coming into the year. And there's a reason for that, because they had a lot of talent on that roster, and those guys were still there at the end of the year. And now you've taken down a St. John's team that a lot of people had, in their Final Four, or at least in their Elite Eight, and what they did going through and winning the Big East this year. So I'm looking at Texas Tech as, okay, why, if we can beat these other programs, why can't we beat Texas Tech? I don't look at this as some, huge mountain for Arkansas to climb, as much as this is just going to be a tough matchup for them. But I don't see any reason that if you're Arkansas, you wouldn't be confident going into the game today. So, we haven't been let down so far by banking on the SEC, and that strength of schedule has proven itself true here. And I'm not going to stop betting on it right now.
Absolutely not. 205-834-9450. I want to get your reaction to the games tonight. What do you think is going to happen tonight? Does Alabama advance? Does Arkansas pull off the upset? Does Arizona pull off the upset over Duke? And does Florida just keep on rolling? We want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. Keep it locked right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning on Jocks 94.5.
7:24 here on your Thursday morning, getting you set for the Sweet 16 coming up later tonight. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell, John Saber here with you this morning. Greg and Cole are going to be back on Monday. And it really is just such a wonderful day in the world of sports. We have 4 Sweet 16 games tonight. We have 4 more tomorrow. But today is also opening day across Major League Baseball. So you have that to look forward to as well. I know a lot of teams, for example, the Yankees, my New York Yankees, as well as Cole's Yankees, getting underway at 2 o'clock on ESPN as they're taking on the Brewers. You're going to have Damian and his Cincinnati Reds. They're hosting the San Francisco Giants today. That game, first pitch at 3 o'clock. You're going to have the Atlanta Braves traveling to take on the San Diego Padres to open up their season. So, wow, unfortunately, it seems like we're all waiting for the inevitable World Series victory by the Dodgers, at least for a couple of days, Damian. We all get to feel like we have a chance.
Absolutely.
And so opening day, a big day here for us at the station. We get to take our opening day picture with all of our jerseys. It's always an exciting time of year and something to look forward to earlier in the day to kind of set the table for the main course tonight with the Sweet 16.
You need some kind of like picture or something that shows that you have a degree from Alabama, because right now you are living the stereotype with your Yankees jersey and your Bama hat.
I know.
Yeah, it's. I'm surprised you don't have a Cowboy slides on.
I was about to say the amount of times that people have said, "Oh, you root for Alabama basketball? I thought you would have been a Duke fan."
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh, I've gotten that plenty of times. I get the Cowboys stuff a lot. I get the Lakers stuff a lot because we talk about how much we love LeBron.
You know, we might be the only people in America that still love LeBron.
Not after that interview.
He had a good interview yesterday.
Yeah, there are a few more.
Good?
You didn't think that was good?
No, I thought it was amazing.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Just him sitting down and
well, you just didn't like what he admitted about Jordan. So yeah, I always looked up to him and all like that. That's why it's just
that's a forever debate. But like it's just
not really a debate, but all right. We know your answer. Don't make me play the clip.
No, I just think like it's just so funny, one, that he had like Stephen A. Smith. They both live in each other's head rent free. Like it's
the best part of the best thing that came out yesterday was Stephen A. Smith saying he wanted to swing at LeBron. Like,
right.
Because come on.
Let's be real now.
I don't think that'd go super well for Stephen A. Smith.
No, not at all. Not in his age. Not at his age. But also it's just, it does kind of I understand a lot. And like it was very eye-opening when he started talking about like his decision to go to Miami. And he brought up a great point. He's like, well, I came into the league at 17 years old. And the one time I finally had a chance to like dictate where I wanted to go.
Make a choice for myself.
Yeah. He's like, I looked at it as like my college decision. He's like, I didn't get a chance to have a signing day or none of that stuff. He's like, I just want to go down, play with my friends in Miami. But then, of course, with the not 1, not 2, not 3, it's just he set the expectation on himself and the team so high, and he didn't achieve it necessarily at that level.
Yeah, that you can look at that team and go, "Oh, you only won 2 titles," and that's
right. It's like, it happens. But he definitely hit the nail on the head when he's like, "I maximized every ounce of potential I could with the Cleveland teams that I took to the NBA Finals." And when you look at that roster that he was with, it's like he wasn't lying.
You did also find out that him and Brian Windhorst are not actually friends,
and that's a connection I never really put together anyway.
Well, yeah, because that was always the story. That was why Brian Windhorst got a job, is because he started following LeBron and being like essentially a LeBron reporter for his early on, and then you find out that LeBron don't really rock with him. No.
And they talk about him signing that Nike deal because he wanted to be like Jordan. He's like, no, they offered me 7 years, $90 million. Like, who's going to say no to that? He's like, I only wear the number 23 because of Jordan. And that, again, that's who he grew up watching. And I can understand that. But again, when you've had that much success, and we can have the debate about Jordan, LeBron all day long. But the thing about LeBron was he had no room to fail. Like he had to come into the league out of high school. And they weren't comparing him to, like some of the good players of that era. They were comparing him to the greatest from the jump. And it's, well, what else is he supposed to do in a situation when he's doing it this long and the longevity of greatness? It's very just Tom Brady like. It's Well, Tom Brady was also a 6th-round pick, so it wasn't like his was.
It's different.
Right. It's just when you're at the top for so long, or even near the top for so long, you take it for granted that he's done this. Like he even talked. Imagine the decision being 15 years ago. Like that was 16, 15 years ago, and it's like it feel like it was just yesterday, and yet he's still in the top 10 in scoring now. He's still averaging almost a triple double like in year 22. So it's. We could have debate forever, but you have to appreciate what he's been able to do for this long and not. I mean, the only thing that's really stopping him is age. Like time is the only thing that's truly stopped him for this long.
Yeah, and it's just wild because I mean, again, if we could sit here and debate this, it would be like first take 3 days out of the week because that seems to be what they're talking about every time I look
have
up.
Too much hair.
Yeah, that's true. We do have too much hair. But regardless of how you look at it, I mean, the fact that you could be somebody that worst case scenario, like, oh, you're the second best player of all time.
Of all time.
Like, and that's the debate where, yeah, you can go back and forth and it is what it is. But no, it's remarkable. And the closest thing you've seen to that in terms of, I think the expectations would be something like, what you got with Bryce Harper coming out and being on Sports Illustrated at 16 years old and having all this pressure on him. And, he's a guy that I know there's a lot of Braves fans probably listening that feel certain type of way about him. But even for somebody like him, I mean, he's on a path of being a Hall of Fame player. He's a multi-time MVP in Major League Baseball, and he's looked at as a disappointment because he's not the greatest baseball player of all time. And he was playing at the same time as Mike Trout, who maybe Bryce Harper now is doing better because he's been able to stay healthy when Mike Trout hasn't. But again, it just goes to show you how good some of these players can be. But based on the expectations, they're still viewed as disappointments, even when at a particular time, they are the best player alive in that sport. And we just take some of these things for granted because the expectations put upon them are so high. We do have, and we want you to chime in, kind of carrying over from Morning Jocks at 205-834-9450. We do want to get your score predictions, not only for Alabama, BYU, but the other Sweet 16 games tonight. How do you see those games going on? Major League Baseball opening day, you want to chime in? What team do you root for? What are your expectations for the year? Are the Braves going to go back to the World Series? All of that. We want to hear from all of you there. And Robert does text in. He does ask, are the Braves going to be back on Jocks this year? And yes, you will be able to hear him here on Jocks. And plus, with an added bonus now, we're a friend of the show. I know y'all have had him on before. We have him on every week on Three Man Front. But our friend Barrett Salee, who is now the pre and post game host for the Braves Radio Network. So you will get to hear the Braves on Jocks 94.5, and you also get to hear some Barrett Salee coverage there as well, Robert. So you will be all covered there. We do have another text coming in. Someone predicting Alabama 105, BYU 86 tonight.
Okay, you take that.
Yeah, I would certainly take that.
Roll Tide.
And Fanboy texting, he says people are nervous about the way that they saw BYU shoot and BYU's center. And they did shoot the ball very, very well about Wisconsin against Wisconsin the other night, that 91-89 win. So maybe when we come back here, we'll go to a break. We'll come back and we'll look at some of those numbers for BYU. What has BYU done this year? What have they done in the NCAA tournament? I know, again, a lot of people, like Fanboys saying, worried about their offensive output. But let's look a little bit into that, compare them to Alabama, and break down that matchup when we return here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning.
7:37 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian, Conrad, and John here with you as we preview the Sweet 16. Just a full day of ball. Opening day in the MLB. Sweet 16 gets tipped off today, and we get to see the Alabama Crimson Tide start things off. And to Robert, no, not Robert. We had somebody text in, fanboy. He texted in, it was like people were nervous when they saw BYU shoot and the BYU center in their matchup with Wisconsin, and it kind of gives you a little bit of an uneasy feeling if you're Alabama. But I think that what that one game was more of a one-off, because I think that Alabama's bigs and the fact that they can rotate a bunch of them in and give them a lot of different looks plays more of an advantage for Alabama than it would for BYU. I just think BYU center, what's his name?
Traore.
Yeah, Traore. I think that that Wisconsin game was more of just a matchup that was favorable for him than I think for Alabama tonight, where you've got Cliff, you got Moby Diabate, you've got Grant Nelson. They have a lot of bodies they can kind of throw at them that are just as athletic, that are just as physical, that are just as strong on both sides of the floor, that I don't really necessarily think that he's going to have that much of an impact, which, I mean, he very well could. But I think it leans more in Alabama's favor because they have more bodies they can throw at him, as opposed to him just kind of finding his rhythm.
Yeah, I think in terms of that matchup, I think what you've seen from Cliff these last couple of games definitely gives you a lot of confidence with that style and what he's been able to do. Obviously, just him being a presence with how big he is on the defensive end, but also what he started to give you offensively. Just looking at the center position specifically, and then you add in what Sherrell has kind of become for Alabama and how he's started to get his confidence as well. We know what Grant Nelson's capable of doing if he is 90% healthy, like Nato had said yesterday. And so I think the big concern for you if you're Alabama, and this has been a problem for them all year, and they even maybe it was after the St. Mary's game or maybe right before it. But they had some of the players that were asked about this, and it's essentially there have been a number of games this year for Alabama where even in games that they've won, the other team, their best player has had their best game of the season from a scoring output. Whether you go and look at what Janai Broom did the last game of the season. Okay, Alabama beat Auburn in that game, but Janai Broom has 34 points. That was the most he's had all year. You go and look at a guy like Eaglestaff when you played North Dakota, who had 40 points against you. And so you can go down, and there's a number of examples this year of players having their best game of the year, offensively speaking, against Alabama. And so Richie Saunders is the leading scorer for BYU. He's averaging about 16 points a game. And he's the guy that absolutely went off against Wisconsin. He had 25 points, 3 of 4 from three-point range, 9 of 16 from the floor. Was perfect on his free throws, added 7 rebounds and 1 assist as well. And that's the kind of thing where if you're Alabama, your goal needs to be, do not let this guy have a career night against you, right? He is a good player, and he is going to get his, right? Especially in this type of game, the way that Alabama plays, right? They're going to let the other team score, and he is going to get his. But if you're keeping him in the low to even mid-20s, I think you can live with that. You don't want to get in a situation where this guy's lighting you up for 30, 35, 40 points, and that's where potentially that can be difficult to overcome if you're Alabama. And for BYU as a whole, I mean, okay, you go back to the Wisconsin game, they had a great night. They shot 12 of 26, which is 46% from deep, which that's going to stick in a lot of games you play. Then you go back to the first round, though, against VCU, a game they won 80-71, and they're shooting 35%. They're only 7 of 20 from 3 in that game. And so, again, while the Wisconsin game is impressive as it was, BYU is a 37% shooting team from 3 on the season. So they're closer to the version you saw against VCU than what you saw against Wisconsin, just looking at their season as a whole. I think you also look at the Wisconsin game as, okay, in the first half, BYU, hot start, they're up 11 at halftime. They allowed Wisconsin to claw themselves back into that game and to make that a one-possession game there at the very end. So even in the situation where if you're Alabama and you come out shooting not so hot, as we saw at times in the Missouri game, the Auburn game the first time, granted, you didn't win those games, and that's not the situation you want to be in, but BYU has also shown that they can be susceptible to letting teams go on a run and get back in things if you don't get the hot start if you're Alabama. So, while the game against Wisconsin, I can understand where if we're going off of, well, BYU shoots the way they did against Wisconsin tonight, and Alabama shoots the way they did against St. Mary's, and Mark Sears continues to shoot the ball poorly from three. Yeah, I can see where that gives you some concern, and maybe that is the path to, Alabama losing this game to BYU. But I just think when you look at them at the season as a whole, what you're getting from BYU, they are still not at the same level as Alabama. Now, have they been playing better as of late? Yes. Are they the number one team statistically on the offensive side of the ball since the middle of February? Yes, they are. But defensively, that's where the gap can come into play. And that's where, if you're Alabama, you need some guys to step up. You need Grant Nelson to step up. You need Mo D to step up. You need Cliff to step up and what they bring to you on the defensive side of the ball. And if you're getting, Sears isn't giving you the offensive output, Philon's not giving you the offensive output you want, what are they giving to you on the defensive side? Are they making up for their lack of scoring with what they can do for you defensively? Because, BYU, while they do have 7 guys that are averaging around 7 points a game or more this year, they have 2 guys that are in double figures, right? You got Saunders, who's averaging 16 points a game, and then Demon, who's averaging 10.5 points a game. So it's not like you've got, 3 guys for BYU who are just loading it up every night, and you have to be worried about, them shooting 41% or 42% as a team from 3-point range on the season. It's actually pretty similar to Alabama. Alabama's shooting 35% from 3 on the season. But if you're Alabama, you have 6 guys that are averaging 10 points or more a game this year. So offensively speaking, the numbers are in your favor. Now, granted, you have to hit your shots, but if, everything regresses to the mean, right? If we're talking about the average here, Alabama, this matchup favors them quite well. And then, you go and look at KenPom, and Alabama, number 4 overall in offensive efficiency rating. They're 29th in the country in defensive efficiency rating. So even as bad as they've been at times defensively, it's because you're going up a lot of good teams in the SEC that, A, they play really good defense, and B, they can score the basketball as well. And then you look at BYU for the season. Okay, they have the 9th best offense compared to 4 for Alabama, but they have the 72nd best defense compared to 29 for Alabama. And unsurprisingly, Alabama's number 1 in tempo. And as much as BYU likes to score, BYU's 178 in tempo. So that just shows you right there, again, for Alabama, I think this matchup plays well for them because based on the style of basketball that they play, if they are just able to execute that, they clearly have the advantage over BYU.
Yeah, and I think for Alabama as well, too, one thing that in a lot of the losses that we saw for Alabama, it was the slow starts. And something they've avoided the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament is jumping out on teams a little bit earlier than expected. And I think that, the one thing that you don't want to do is find yourself behind the 8 ball, and it starts to feel like some of the older games that we saw Alabama play where the first time out, you're down, 12-3 or something like that. Like against Missouri, when Missouri came out the gate just on fire.
Yeah, you're down 12-0, and the rest of the game it's tied, but you lose by 12.
You lose by 12. Yeah, and you were chasing from the jump.
Yep.
And I think that's one thing that Alabama needs to avoid. And I think, controlling the turnovers, something that, in a lot of the losses, they had, multiple turnovers in big time situations. And I think, Mark Sears eventually is going to hit. And when it does, can everybody else still maintain their level of play as well as what Mark Sears brings to you? Because again, he is your guy. Like, he is the number 1 option as far as offensive production is concerned. But I think from what you saw the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament, it's okay. And it's okay if he's not on, because they still found a way to win ball games, and rather convincingly against St. Mary's, where they never really felt like they were in the ball game.
I will just give you this quote from Chris Youngblood when he was talking with some media yesterday in the locker room. This is Chris Youngblood. Quote, "If you're a 40% shooter and you're shooting 15% for 5 games, you're due for a crazy game. So if you're in a slump right now, it means we're due for a couple of good games, and it's around the right time, so I'm excited." Again,
it's confidence. It's confidence in your boy.
Doesn't mean anything. Those words don't mean that that's magically going to happen, but clearly that's something that the players are thinking of and talking about themselves. And it goes back to, again, shooters shoot. And eventually, when you're a guy like Mark Sears, you didn't shoot 42% from 3 in the postseason last year on a fluke, right? It's because you're a good 3-point shooter. And I'm not saying that Mark Sears is going to go out and and have 35 points tonight. I'm not saying that he's going to shoot, 40+% from three the rest of the way. But if you're getting Mark Sears back to shooting 33%, 35% from three, you're going to be in a pretty good spot if you're Alabama, because that's going to double the production that you've been getting from him for the last couple of weeks now.
Absolutely. We'll continue the conversation on the other side. Get your reactions, 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls on the other side. Keep it locked right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Welcome back into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, John Saber filling in for the guys as they enjoy a little spring break. Hopefully they are having a good time with the fam, and be aware of some of the pollen out there. Make sure you're taking their medicine and stuff. For flu, pollen, and allergy season, keep your home cleaner with a Trains Clean Effects Home Air Cleaner. Removes up to 99.9% of airborne particles, including those contributing to allergy and virus is proven more effective than standard and HEPA air filters. Contact a trained, certified dealer for the Clean Effects Air Cleaner. 205-834-9450. You can always text in, call in there. We have somebody texted in, and he is saying with his absolute chest, says Bama fans are so bleep scary. Y'all always speak from a place of fear. If you're a big dog, carry yourself as such. None of your lives depend on them winning or not. If Bama loses, they lose. So what? I think they will pull it off. From the time Bama made the Sweet 16 is how can Bama stop BYU? I hate being associated with losers. Say it with your chest and let the chips fall where they may. RMFTR.
I guess he didn't like Fanboy's text about the shooting.
No.
Well, as we just laid out for you, it definitely benefits Alabama.
Right.
If we're looking at the numbers, Alabama certainly has the advantage on paper at least, but
I feel like everything we've been discussing kind of leans that Alabama's going to win this game, and it's kind of BYU has to play a little above their standard.
Yeah, I mean, again, if both teams just go out there and play their average basketball game, like what you've seen, just take their overall performance in this season, mix it up in a bowl, and you get the average performance from Alabama and BYU, Alabama's going to win that game.
I agree 100%.
That's just the way that it works.
Yeah.
If Alabama doesn't hit their shots and BYU hits their shots, Alabama's probably not going to win the game. But
exactly.
I mean, you could say that about essentially 99.9% of basketball games that are played. But yeah, I mean, no, if you're an Alabama fan, I think you should be very confident going into this game tonight. That doesn't mean that, we're telling you that, it's a guarantee. Alabama is guaranteed 100% to win. But the matchup is very favorable for you. And as we've been trying to talk about all week is this matchup with BYU is the best matchup that Alabama has had in the tournament so far, just in terms of style of play and Alabama being able to do what they do best. This is that game for Alabama. This is the game. If you're you're concerned about Mark Sears shooting, you're concerned about what you've seen from Alabama offensively at times, this is the time.
Mm-hmm.
As well as defensively, because of how good BYU is and how much they can score. This is a chance to show a little something on that front too. If we know that team's got a chip on their shoulder on the defensive side, and this is about the time they picked it up last year, and we're going to see if they can do it again. But yeah, I think going into the game tonight, looking at it objectively, if you're an Alabama fan, you have to like your chances.
Yep. LT texted in. He says he's got Alabama over BYU 80-73. A grind out game saved the 100-point outburst for the Elite Eight matchup.
I mean, hey, if you can just save those,
right? I kind of like remove all doubt. Like, why can't you score over 100 back to back?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I say empty the clip.
I mean, if you have a way to, bottle that performance up and save it for the right time, that'd be ideal. But
yeah,
but no, I mean,
why ease into it with 80?
Yeah, no, we're just poking fun. But no, I mean, that would be If it's, I will say this, if it is 80-73, there's going to be a lot of people losing a lot of money because
sounds like that under is steaming.
Yeah, and based on the people I talked to, that doesn't seem to be the popular pick. So,
nah, I
think a lot of people are expecting a 90-85, 95-90 style of game.
That's kind of how I'm thinking.
Yeah,
that's kind of how I'm thinking. And again, Alabama, it's. When they're on, and it's going to be difficult for BYU to match up with the pace that Alabama plays with and not jack up some threes. Like they're gonna have to start. I feel as though if Alabama jumps out on BYU early, BYU is going to have to press. Like they're going to press, and they're going to get out of their natural element of kind of trying to slow the game down and be a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, and I could see even being a little bit like maybe the Auburn and Creighton game, right? Where in the first half, Creighton shooting, 60% from three, and they just look unstoppable that day. And then you regress back to who you are in the second half, and Auburn obviously able to pull off a win there. But I could see something like that where you just have a BYU team that comes out really, really hot. Maybe Alabama not quite as hot. But then once that settles back down, the better team can pull away. But we'll just have to see how it's going to go. But a lot to look forward to. We are 10 hours and 13 minutes away.
There we go.
Now that I'm counting.
That's what I'm here for, man. That's what I'm here for. Sweet 16 coming up today. We'll take a little bit of a pivot. We'll talk some college football. Alabama set the scrimmage this morning. Also, Mike Gundy said he wants Bedlam back. Hour number 2 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian, Conrad, and John holding things down for the fellas as they enjoy a little spring break. Hopefully everybody's safe. Had a great time enjoying your spring break as well. Got the Sweet 16 coming up tonight. Of course, opening day for MLB. Well, the official opening day, even though the Dodgers and the Cubs had their little fun in overseas.
This is opening day. It's just not the first day. It's opening day. Stores have grand openings, but it's not the first day they're open.
That's a good point. It's kind of like a soft launch.
Yeah.
This is the hard launch.
Yeah. Full blown.
I was about to say the soft launch is when like you send a picture to your friends in the group chat of like, oh, this is the person I'm dating. And then the hard launch is when you post it on
IG.
Yeah.
I got
you. When you start school, you don't start in first grade, which would make sense. No, you start kindergarten.
That's right. You got to learn those colors and stuff.
It's not the first grade. It's kindergarten. Just because it's called something don't mean it's something.
Well, and when you're born, you're not 1.
Yeah.
You're 0.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, he ain't got a school week. I feel like we got to educate him a little bit, I guess.
But someone was sending shots at Damien this morning for not wanting to talk about decimals. Someone was taking a shot at Damien and Burnham Southern being closed and him not.
Right. I was like,
wanted to break down math formulas at 6:30 in the morning.
They had like score predictions of like 73.25. I was like, that can't happen.
This ain't a line. Yeah.
Right. Like they can't happen, dog. That's why I was just so confused. Like, this is whatever these picks are, this is a little off. But we'll talk a little college football. Alabama set to hit their first spring scrimmage this morning. I think they're on the field right now. We'll get some reports there on 3-man front later on today of just how everybody looks. I know the past couple of days we went from, we were thinking Ty Simpson, hey, he's kind of his job to lose. And the other people were just like, no, we don't want to see Ty Simpson as a starting quarterback at all. And it's like, okay, well, we shall see then. If Austin Mack is continuing to develop, Keelan Russell, again, freshman, get his first, live action early on in the spring. So we'll make sure we monitor that. But Mike Gundy, head coach of Oklahoma State, brought up a little idea. And going back to Coach Deion Sanders, Coach Prime in Colorado was saying that, hey, we would love to have, another team come to Boulder and have like a little organized team activities, I guess you'd say, for their, spring game or spring, I guess, activities, I guess you'd say. Well, Mike Gundy brought up an interesting idea with an old rival. How about he invited Oklahoma back to Big 12 land and potentially having a spring scrimmage with Oklahoma? On the foundational surface, I get it. It's another opponent that you can have somewhat of a live game action or live game feel with it. But I don't think that
that wound is too fresh.
I don't think Oklahoma would, I guess you'd say, stoop back to lower levels of competition, especially not with Oklahoma State. Like that's a rivalry. Like I don't necessarily think that we would. I'm not on board with that one.
You look really proud of that pun.
What?
Stooping.
Oh man, I ain't even think. I ain't even think about
100%.
that.
I thought, no, he absolutely did.
Yeah, he's trying to play it off. I was like, man, that's one of those things you're laying in bed at night and you're like, I'm gonna use. I don't know when, but I'm gonna use this at the right opportunity.
I promise you, that didn't even didn't even register.
That's right. Yeah,
it didn't even register.
Sure.
I'm sure it didn't.
No, I'm serious. I know him. No, but appreciate it though. That was a bar.
I was like, that's pretty. That's pretty good.
Honestly, you're an uncle. It's basically a dad joke.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, you're just getting a head start on your dad jokes. Like that was pretty good.
I seriously did not even think about that. But no, I don't think that it would be ideal for either one because one, Oklahoma left the Big 12 anyway and kind of just left y'all in the dust. Like y'all are definitely little brothers. But also Mike Gundy, if you bring him back and think about, all right, if we're having a quote unquote, not necessarily a full scrimmage, but enough to, get some tensions a little high. And to your point, I think the wound is too fresh. I wouldn't, because imagine if as bad as Oklahoma State was last year, and for as inconsistent as Oklahoma was last year, if Oklahoma State keeps score and they beat Oklahoma, if you're Oklahoma, you got to feel like, why did we even leave? Like, are we even that good? Are we still the Oklahoma Sooners? Like, what has happened in the midst of us going from the Big 12 to the SEC? And then when we go back and match up with, an old fling, it's, like, you've gotten better. Long time no see.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, one, it's cool to have another opponent. But I think for a rivalry like that, it's almost, I'm not going to say making a mockery of it, but it's kind of just sweeping up under the rug of how, quote unquote, good of a rivalry it was when they played in the fall.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of, and I know this is a different circumstance, but, I guess kind of expanding on that, like I wouldn't be a fan of scrimmaging, and I know they do this in the NFL, I guess, but, scrimmaging, like if you're in the SEC, don't scrimmage another SEC team. Right. And I know that's not a problem here now because, obviously Oklahoma State's in the Big 12, but even teams that you were just that familiar with, I'm kind of with you, and it takes a little bit away from it. And plus, if it's, okay, well, we're taking away the rivalry, but instead we're going to bring it back as a spring game. Like that's, I think people would rather just like leave it alone. And then, if a decade from now you want to schedule a non-conference rivalry, like what you have with South Carolina and Clemson every year, then let's do that. But I think doing it in the spring game, again, I am totally on board with the idea, and like just the general concept that we've heard from Gundy. We heard it from Hugh Freeze the other day after Auburn's first official practice. We've heard it from Dion and some other guys, but of having a more NFL style OTA type system. If you've ever watched Hard Knocks, when you see the two teams going up against each other in practice, like that style of play in the spring, I would be totally cool with that. Now, another thing that Gundy brought up that I do think is a good idea, if you were to, set something like this up, and so I'll just read you part of this quote from my Gundy yesterday. He says, quote, they should come here on the 19th, and I think Thursdays earlier in the year, we should go down there and play a home and home in the spring against them, talking about Oklahoma, and we'll charge $25 a head. They can use it for NIL. We'll use it for NIL. If they don't want to do 2 in 1 spring, we can do one here this year and then do it there the next year and split the gate for the spring game for NIL because we get tired of practicing against each other. So essentially the idea that maybe that's something fans wouldn't be as fond of, in the sense of you're used to these events being free. And I know that this is an opportunity, for, people that maybe can't afford to take a family of 4 to an Alabama or Auburn game in the regular season. This is your chance to get some of that atmosphere and some of that experience and not have to pay admission. But if instead of watching what we're now getting with these modified spring games, if you're now getting a full-on scrimmage between, like we had heard Colorado and Syracuse or something, for example, I think you could maybe convince people, hey, pay $20 a head. Maybe you do some deal with concessions where you have, like $2 hot dogs and $2 sodas, something like that, to where it's more economically, feasible for these people, but there's still an incentive to go down there and you're getting to see something different. And you're getting to feel maybe like you're getting more of a regular season game type experience, but you're paying a little bit of money and knowing, okay, well, this money is going directly to fund maybe the roster for next year's team and trying to bring in as much talent as possible. So I think that is an interesting idea, and I would be okay with that.
I think you guys are nuts, because if this rivalry is supposed to be as deep as it's supposed to be, now you're not going to get it probably ever again. This is your only chance to get it. If you hate this team, if they are your true rival, like you are saying, this is the only way to get it on the football field. Yeah, you can have the bedlam of basketball, bedlam of volleyball. You can have all of that. But if you're going to get it, if you ever want to get on the football field, if this is your only shot, you need to take it.
But it doesn't count for anything.
Do you think it waters down the rivalry?
Yeah, but because then it's like,
it can't water it down when it's not being played. I mean, what rivalry is there to keep it going?
If you move it to the spring, it serves no purpose other than you just scrimmage. Like, it's just a scrimmage.
But as you said, if they keep score, they're going to keep score, or at least the players on the field are going to know who won and lost. The fans in the stands will know who won and lost. You may not, in 60 years from now, go back in the record book when we're looking up Wikipedia. Oh, actually, they didn't keep scoring that one. No, we know. Just like taking away NCAA banners for violating rules. They actually didn't win. We saw Reggie Bush won that Heisman. We know he won. Okay, yeah, they gave me that's a bad example, but we know what happened. We know Alabama won a bunch of games, in 06, 07. Nope, they were vacated. No, we know who won.
Do you think you would get more effort from the players in that type of a situation, in the sense of instead of going up against each other or going up against a team that you don't have any ties to?
Yeah.
In spring ball, you're going up against a rival. Do you think that gets more out of the guys in spring ball?
Probably, because if that rivalry is as heated as we're led to believe,
Yeah.
I would think so. Yes, I would like to think that around here, if Alabama and Auburn were to play and have this kind of spring scrimmage, I'd like to think the players would get up more. Now, granted, I think the players would just get up because they ain't hitting someone.
Yeah.
Someone's hitting someone new. But we also know that as much as we as fans appreciate and love the intensity in the Iron Bowl, a decent amount of the players don't view it as such, especially if they're coming from out of state. Like, oh yeah, it's a big team. Yeah, they're our rival, but Tennessee's our rival, LSU's our rival. We got Georgia's our rival. We've got all these rivals that, yeah, most everyone in the program is up for it, but I'm not going to say 100% everyone in there is wanting to beat down or wanting to beat them because it's the rival. But all of that to say, if Bedlam is as intense as I believe we think it is, or at least it's on par with Iron Bowl and Egg Bowl and some of the nation's best rivalries, if I'm Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, yeah, I want this to happen. And especially with Gundy kind of putting it out there. Now, if I'm Oklahoma, I maybe see why they don't want it, but also they don't. I think it's almost not a one-sided rivalry, but it's like a Georgia Tech rivalry. Like, Oklahoma State definitely views Oklahoma as their biggest rival. Oklahoma's like, yeah, they're a rival, but so is Texas too. And so, yeah, you're a little brother, but like that's the cousin I hate. And yeah, you're my brother, but that cousin's like my same age, and like we fight all the time.
Okay, so for example, all right, so this year we got Texas and Texas A&M. That rivalry came back. Do you think that rivalry or that game would have been more intense or would have had more anticipation around? I mean, it already had a ton, but do you think it would have had even more if you had Texas and Texas A&M, doing a spring scrimmage for the last 10 years when you didn't have that rivalry, right? And people have been missing it. And I guess that's the point of view I was coming from with Oklahoma State is, okay, if the rivalry goes away, but it's going to come back at some point in the future, which it may or may not, does this then, kind of damper that when it would come back, or would it just kind of build the anticipation of, oh, maybe one day we'll get to see them playing the regular season game again. And so getting to see this every spring is just kind of ratcheting up that anticipation for when it could actually happen.
No, and a lot of it just has to do with where it is on the calendar. Like, I think like it's tough. If it's not in season, it just feels like it's a glorified practice, just not against your own.
Well, that's what it is.
Yeah, I would much rather it be an actual game. Because also too, and like, I don't understand why Bedlam even left, because it's not like you couldn't find a way to schedule. Like, Oklahoma's playing Temple. Like, even if you just
look at
move
Florida and South Carolina,
right? Yeah, you move the dates around and say I mean, if Auburn and Georgia can go from being the week before the Iron Bowl to a random day in September, random Saturday in September, why couldn't Bedlam do that? Because I think like it just wouldn't. Because think about how much of the roster would change after a Bedlam. So say like, I mean, again, a lot of those guys would probably transfer anyway. But if you're not being at full tilt, like you're not playing you're having your first team out there the entire time, but you send like the 2s and 3s in there for the second and third quarter, and then you got the walk-ons in the 4s. It's like, it kind of just dumbs down what the actual rivalry was when both teams were at their absolute best playing each other, whereas opposed to, well, we're just going against another opponent.
Yeah, and I think what makes it an interesting discussion is there's really no right answer. I guess it's just what you would prefer as a fan, because I mean, I totally understand where John's coming from. I think that's a great point of view. Even if I look at it, similar to how you do, of you don't want to water down some of these certain rivalries, but I also understand if for example, they were to take the Iron Bowl away and we didn't have the Iron Bowl, like, yeah, you're going to want any opportunity you have to get that back in whatever capacity it is. So I guess I can understand it both ways. And I know some people have been chiming in on the text line, but no, that would be a great thing. We want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. Do you want to see, not moving past just the spring game scrimmages, but would you be a fan of seeing rivalry games in these spring scrimmages? Would you be a fan of two SEC teams going up against each other in spring practice? Or do you think that waters down the product of what you get in spring? That's not what it's supposed to be about. Because I think we're going to have a lot of people that have very different opinions on that. Yeah.
205-834-9450. We got some Jody text in. He says when he says Bedlam is not in the same universe as the Iron Bowl.
It's not.
It's not. Yeah. It's just, they share the same state. And he said Bedlam ended because Oklahoma State was mad OU went to the SEC. Seems very Gundy-like.
He also, oh man, he's letting it go. Yeah, he also Oklahoma leads the series against Oklahoma State 91-20-7. It's not a rivalry except to Ohio State or Oklahoma State fans. As an Oklahoma grad and season ticket holder, Bedlam is not a football rivalry for OU. It is the most one-sided in-state matchup in the history of college football. Okay.
Well,
Texas and Texas A&M is getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one-sided too, and yet we're all here saying, "Oh, that is one of the best rivalry sorts." It's decidedly one-sided.
1,000%.
But again, I admitted that I have a feeling that that's more one-sided, like a Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech views it's in Georgia Tech's fight song. It's to hell with Georgia. But again, Georgia has them as a rival, but also, if we don't play that game, we're fine.
Yeah. We continue to get your reaction on the other side. 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls on the other side of McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Welcome back into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian, Conrad, and John here with you. With Mike Gundy saying, hey, let's bring Bedlam back to the spring. It kind of just opened up a question that, would you like to see your rivals in a springtime matchup? Again, if you've ended a rivalry or you didn't get a chance, like, Texas A&M for a long time, if they would have gotten that in the spring. I just think that, there's so much change in the springtime that you don't really feel like you get like just the pureness of what makes it the rivalry. And I think that's what kind of, eggs onto the regular season, because most of the time you see rivalry week at the last game of the regular season and you're getting both teams at full tilt. Whereas in the spring, you might not even know who your starting quarterback is, but you'll roll one with the first team, get some reps. And again, if you keep scoring, it kind of just, we weren't at our full peak.
But on the flip side of that, like rivalry weekend, you got to sit on this. This is most likely the last practice, or at least your first true test of anything. And okay, say if this were to happen, this is probably not the ultimate. All right, we end our spring practice with this. It may, even if there is something more.
Mm-hmm.
But Oklahoma loses to Oklahoma State, or whoever loses, they get to sit on that for 6-7 months, just like you do rivalry weekend. Alabama and Auburn, whoever loses gets to sit with that.
In that sense, it's more of like a pride thing, which I get, but there's added pressure. Like, think about, the Kick Six. Both teams were in the top 5 in the nation at that point, and literally the winner was going to the SEC championship. Whereas if you just schedule, like, say at the Iron Bowl in the spring and it serves nothing, it's just kind of, we beat y'all, but it didn't really do anything as far as like your regular season.
Well, and I think in that situation too, again, that's why I said at the beginning, I don't think you could ever do this in a situation where you have teams that are going to play then in the regular season,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
you don't see that in the NFL either. Like what'll typically happen, like I know like the Steelers and the Eagles will have their combined practice.
Right.
They do that 3 out of 4 years because every 4 years they play each other in the regular season. So the other 3, they'll do that because they know that year, all right, well, we're going to see each other. We're not going to do it. The Saints and the Patriots do the same thing. They play each other every 4 years. So the other 3, they have that combined practice. So it fully makes sense. And it may be kind of difficult to wrap our heads around for Alabama because there's not a rival that they have that they've stopped playing.
Right.
Or even maybe the ones that don't as much, like a new rival, like Georgia. You play your cards right, you're going to see them one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be kind of difficult for that because Alabama hasn't truly lost a rival. Maybe Florida, but again, like the way the schedule is going to work out, you're going to see them. So it may be difficult to do this in conference. And so maybe that's why, as SEC fans, we're not as gung-ho for this, because any rival we have in the SEC, maybe this state's different because Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, South Carolina, those states have built-in rivals from another conference.
Yes.
But also they see them annually as well. But someone like this would be perfect for Pitt and West Virginia.
Yeah.
A game that used to, was the backyard brawl or whatever. Like that used to be an annual thing. And they made it happen this year. They kind of make it happen because, we're out of conference, but we can make it happen.
Yeah.
But what if they're not able to make it happen? Well, this is a way for that to happen. And all I'm saying is, if the hatred for the rivalry is that real, I think as a fan base, you would rather have this than nothing. And yes, I do see where you're coming from, Damian, in that it doesn't feel the same, but also it's spring ball. You don't feel like spring ball feels the same as a regular season. You know that. But also you get a taste of this. How a lot of people feel this way about the UFL that's about to start. Well, it's not the same. Oh, it's spring ball. Okay. Tell me the people that are shirtless and protective don't feel that.
But it's a regular season. Like, they're playing a regular season the whole time. Whereas this is just a one-off. Like, this is just a one-off game that doesn't really mean anything. Like, in the reason, I get what you're saying because they're playing it in the spring, but I'm saying in spring practice, if you're just going towards like, oh yeah, we're playing Oklahoma State.
It's preseason versus regular season.
Yeah.
But with that, well, one, if it's a rivalry, it's going to mean something. Whether or not it's maybe a official game, if it's a true rivalry, it'll mean something.
It's
to them.
bragging rights to the fan base one way or another. Yeah.
And two, it's like a bowl game. It's an exhibition. Those may or may not mean something. Yes, it technically counts for your record or whatever, but it if you're on the field, it means something. Now, maybe different for us as fans that, okay, they may not have that same intensity, but as a fan, if you're paying $25 and getting $2 hot dogs and getting to see your rival you're not going to see anymore, yeah, I'll take it.
Well, and see, that's the other part too is, because I'm sure there's some people that the thought of, oh, I would have to pay to go to a spring scrimmage, that's a non-starter for them, right? Immediately, no, I'm done. Because the appeal of it was a financially, friendly way to go and experience this, with your family, with your kids, whatever. But then when you throw in the rivalry aspect, I do think that's an easier sell, right? It's an easier sell, no offense to any of these teams, but you could sell a lot more tickets to an Alabama-Auburn scrimmage than an Alabama-UNA scrimmage or something right? And so that's the other element to it is what's kind of that sweet spot to where you can get fans to want to come out and support it at the same level, but also where they feel like they're getting their money's worth, they're getting their values worth for their time and what it's going to take to attend something like that. But I do think, one of the points that Saber makes does kind of hit home for a lot of us. And that is, we're not in a situation where we're longing for these rivalries that our team, has lost over the years. And, oh man, do you remember when, these two teams used to play every year? It was the best. And now we don't have that anymore. And, we're fortunate. We just haven't had to go through that really in the SEC. And so I think that gives us a different perspective where maybe we're not as willing to bite on it because we haven't lost something.
Right.
You don't know what you have until it's gone kind of thing.
Yeah. And Max texts in, he says, playing a spring game ratchets up exponentially risk of injury, no go in my book. And that's the thing. You can get injured in 7-on-7. You can get injured, stretching. Like you can pull something when you stretch. Like it's.
Now you might have more fights.
Right. Like
especially if it's rivalries.
Yeah.
Football exponentially ratchets up the possibility for injury.
Breathing and walking. Yeah. Like you run the risk of, rolling an ankle here and there. Like that just kind of comes with it. It's
so
the
them
nature
dudes
of
going
the game.
down to 30A and playing football on the beach.
Right.
Like that's not going to ratchet up any injury.
No, you can't get hurt in sand.
Yeah. See, and this is kind of where I thought a lot of people would go too. It's just DJ Pip, he takes in, he says, I love for Alabama to play someone like UAB in the spring. I think it would get eyes on both teams here in Alabama. And that's kind of where we were going to, kind of with,
I think a lot of people,
what Colorado was doing with Syracuse. Just, they're probably not going to match up at any point during the regular season. And then for us here locally, like a Jacksonville State goes to Alabama or something, or Troy goes to Auburn, Auburn and South Alabama are playing in the regular season. But yeah, kind of like the smaller, like the mid majors versus, Power 5 necessarily. Because you see it in high school with classifications, like a 6A will play a 7A or even jump up. Like I remember we played Jemison before we started playing them in the regular season. And they were at 4A at the time and we were still 1A and we played them in the spring game. And I mean, like you jump up in situations like that. But
I think your concern with a situation like that, though, is, okay, let's say Alabama and UAB went out and scrimmaged. All right, is UAB keeping their ones in the entire time to try to get as many reps against that level of competition? Or are you going to have guys that are maybe a little more, I'm here to prove something about myself, and maybe you're going to, I think there's pros and cons to both sides, but you can see where there could then arise issues of, okay, well, if you got Alabama, and maybe it's, maybe they'd be fine with it, but if you got Alabama or Auburn's third string running up against UAB, and UAB's just, we're going to have our first string guys in there the whole time because this is good experience, does that kind of then ruin it for the depth for a team like UAB, where those other guys, your second and third string guys aren't getting the rep? There's just a lot of things that would have to go into that and how you would play around that. Maybe you could just make rules, but again, then we're talking about someone having to enforce rules in college football, and that's not going to.
And that's why I felt
happen.
Like if we're going to do a spring game, something like it needs to be comparable opponents. While it would be cool and fun if Alabama, UAB is a touchy side, but Alabama were to take on, let's say, like Dayton or Cincinnati's a Power 4 now, but a team like that, a group of 5, but they're probably not going to see. I think that's tough because I think most likely Alabama would treat it like a normal spring game or like an NFL preseason game. But Cincinnati, well, I can't use Cincinnati. Kent State
Yeah.
Yeah, they were going to be
they're gonna treat it's their Super Bowl. So that's why I think like if an Alabama or Auburn's going to do something, it needs to be like Colorado and Syracuse, teams that are more or less on the same level, or at least maybe not NIL whatever wise, but like comparable in terms of like Alabama should take on like a Minnesota, something like that.
Because no. I'm
not opposed to the other way. It just because one thing, I think it was Cole, one of the normal hosts, said that you don't think that, especially in this day, which is why Matt Rule I think didn't want to have a spring game because people potentially getting poached. You're going to tell me that if Alabama's taking on Kent State and a guy thinks like, oh, this is my chance, I'm going to the show.
Right.
I'm going to Tuscaloosa and all eyes on him. I'm going to show the F out to make sure I do get poached. Now, that I do think could potentially exponentially increase the possibility of injury when you've got someone that, not that they play dirty, but
try
is
hard,
going to, try
their chance.
Literally 110% this time. Yeah.
Well, and then you also don't want a situation where, if you're at, let's say Alabama or Auburn, and you're looking at, whoever you have scheduled, and, like your point about, if you had Alabama and Dayton or whoever, or Kent State, are you better off just doing a normal spring game because the guys that you have are going to be more talented? And so are you almost doing your team a disservice by going up and scrimmaging against lesser competition when you would maybe be better off just doing your normal practices with your own players because you're going to have more talent going up against your own guys than going up against a lower quality team.
Right. Like somebody takes in is you start seeing people transfer at halftime, hitting the transfer portal at halftime.
Oh yeah, dude. Somebody will go and, they'll burn a DB in a spring game and they'll go and, post it online and they'll be getting 7-figure offers that afternoon.
How hilarious would it be if in the first half, like there's some DB or some wide receivers just showing out, gets an offer and then
just goes to the other side.
Like, I already got a jersey for you, big dog.
Come on in.
But it would be cool. That would be unique to see. Like if you're, I don't want to put Sanford in this boat because they do play a couple SEC teams this year. And again, it's all about depth in spring too, because say if you're in a quarterback battle and you really don't know who your number one is, and then like say if you're like the Mac Jones and like Bryce Young situation and you see no drop off between 1 and 2s and you're like, hey coach, I thought you were gonna put your 2s in, and Bryce Young starts lighting you up and it's like, oh well, looks like our depth is a little bit stronger than I thought.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's too, there's a lot of ways to look at it. And again, with it being the spring, nothing is ever complete. Like if you're TJ Finley, like you're going to 5 different schools, you essentially have had 5 different scrimmages. You've looked at different opponents every single time you've had a spring practice. And to that point too, if you ball out in the first half against, an Oklahoma State, whatever, and you instantly hit the transfer portal, it's like, well, dang, we shouldn't even have scrimmaged them. We shouldn't even put them on the schedule. But I think it's something that we can continue discussing. Somebody said Alabama and Georgia Tech was rivals back in the day. That's why the fight song, it says, sends the Yellow Jackets to a watery grave. So yeah, Alabama has lost a rival completely. But I would not want to see back in the day, I would have not wanted to see the triple option in the spring.
No, but okay. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that have been Alabama fans for longer than I have. I have never once in my life heard somebody say, man, I really miss when Alabama played Georgia Tech. I'm just saying. Like,
Same with Swanee, because they were both in the SEC.
Right.
So yeah.
Tulane. Like I for one have personally never.
And if that's the case, if they missed it so much, why aren't they scheduled? I mean, granted, yes, I know it's on the schedule now, but they're playing them 28-9 or whatever. It's somewhat.
Brinky's an Alabama guy. He'll make it happen. Right?
Yeah, he's scared.
But why haven't they played before until now? If it was that big a rivalry,
because Alabama's scared of the Yellow Jackets.
Just like UAB, I guess. Okay.
Right. Somebody brought up a great question. It says, "What about Alabama playing the Stallions in the spring game?"
No. No. I don't. No. I'm just going to leave it at no.
That's too healthy.
No, but you can continue to text in, chime in with your thoughts on the show, 205-834-9450. Alabama is getting underway right now, actually, having their first scrimmage of the spring practice session. So you're going to hear reports from that. Kalen DeBoer meeting with the media around 10:30. Rodney, we're going to be on three-man front at 11 to bring us the latest on what's going on down there in Tuscaloosa. You got Auburn still going on with spring practice, getting things kicked off this week. So football is in the air, but it is also MLB opening day and Sweet 16 kickoff day, as you're going to have Alabama and BYU, and then Auburn taking on, I just completely blanked. Michigan. I was going to say Michigan State, but that would be in the next round. But Auburn taking on Michigan tomorrow. So we have a lot more to get to. Your text, your calls, 205-834-9450. You're listening to McElroy and Cubelic in the morning.
Welcome back into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian, Conrad, and John here with you. You see some pictures from the Alabama scrimmage. The Guardian caps always get me. Like, it's just...
Does Keelan Russell look like the best player of all time?
Sure. Greatest Alabama quarterback since Greg McElroy.
I'm just saying, man, when we were watching him throw against air at the beginning of practice, he looked dominant.
Those Guardian caps are the sports bra things that the guys wear. Like it's just now that I understand the importance of it, it's weird. It just looks weird. That's all.
Just a weird look.
Wait,
man.
male sports bra?
Like the padding, like the.
Oh, I was like, did I miss?
Nah,
there's some kind of something on that. Joe Burrow's worn it. Kyler's worn it.
Yeah.
That thing.
Thing.
I got you. I was like, did I miss?
Yeah.
A new
it's
fashion
helpful.
trend
I understand,
in sports.
But right.
I mean, you wearing it.
Yeah.
It's just a weird look. That's all.
Exactly.
Got to protect your noggin.
Got to protect everything, I guess. But it is, and that's the thing, man. Like, I'm all about, I understand player safety. But football, it's hard to be, quote unquote, safe in a high collision sport like this. And I understand, like, to me, football players that play the sport, we understand the risk. Like, that's why you got to sign all these waivers and insurance forms and things like that, because, the worst could happen. But the game of football has changed over the years, and I understand, but you can't eliminate everything from the sport. Like, you just can't. Because when you look at a lot of these, like, think of just how practices have changed so much that, back in the day, they were just, it was like the Junction Boys. It was just an all-out just battle. And yes, I know what the wear and tear does to you, but that's what makes the sport. That's why only certain people can play at the higher levels and it can continue on, because, all the wear and tear it does weigh on you. But, like, when even in the NFL, when you see guys wearing Guardian caps, and it's like, man, at the miles per hour that you're going, it's a literal car crash every single snap of the football. Like, what the risk is.
I was about to say, what you're signing up for.
Right. And it's always been just kind of, it's always just been, you can't take the physicality out of the game. Because, like, with targeting and things like that, like, I think, like, again, one thing on the football field, or really in any sport, the one thing you really don't want to do is think. Like, that 1/2 a second, like, oh man, am I going to get a targeting penalty? I got to adjust everything. And then you end up letting the receiver catch the ball. He runs, 70 yards right past you because you had that one split second of indecision that can cause more damage than anything. And I think that, the safety of the game and the way the pads are now, and you can't really hit in practice as much. Greg and Cole have talked about this ad nauseum for a while. You see why defenses struggle in, like, tackling, because they don't get a chance to do it in practice. Like, you just don't. And you can't really take people to the ground. I mean, quarterbacks have always been protected, and then they're even more protected in games. And it's like, well, they don't have a different color jersey on Saturday or Sunday. Like, they're liable to take the same amount of risk as anybody else. Like, they're not 1 of 10. They're 11 man on the football field. And by God, if you have the opposite jersey on, you're on this football field. By God, if look at, some quarterbacks that have made tackles after interceptions and things, but they can lay the lumber. But if you breathe on them too hard, it's roughing the passer. So I understand you got to protect certain positions, but they're 1 of 11 too. Like, they're getting paid mega bucks as well. That I can understand you want to keep them upright in practice, but on game day, if a hard hit happens on a quarterback, it happens, dog. Like, welcome to the game. Welcome to the game.
No, you're absolutely right. That's like Gavin, who texted in at 205-834-9450. He says, when you sign up to play the game of football, you know what you're getting into. The game is meant to be violent.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason that it's so popular, and I don't think I think we all know why. It's because people like watching a physical sport, and you like watching guys go out there and, try to snap each other in half, essentially, because that's
a gladiator sport.
Yeah, it is. The closest thing that we have, I guess, legally. Maybe there's some weird thing out there, but yeah, legally to modern day gladiators here in America. But that's absolutely why we sign up for it, and that is why they have made such an effort at getting better, and they have made strides,
right?
Certainly, especially here recently, but. I mean, you are playing a kid's game, and once you get to this level, especially now that we're getting to, I mean, heck, you have places where you have NIL in high school now, right? Like, you're putting your body on the line because you love it, and probably because you look at either A, it can further your education, get you an opportunity to go to college.
Yep.
And then even beyond that, potentially for financial compensation, either in college, now in high school, and then obviously at the NFL level. And that comes with a price, right? If you are blessed with the ability to go and play a child's game for a career and make millions of dollars doing it, unfortunately, that's going to come with some risk. And if you're not okay with that risk, we've seen the Andrew Lucks of the world. We've seen Aaron Donald. We've seen guys at the top of the game more recently that have decided to say, Luke Kuechly, that have decided to say, this isn't worth it for me anymore. I've gotten what I wanted out of this. I got a good life. I got a good career. I reached the top of the mountain. I made a lot of money. I have financial security, but I don't want a bowl of mashed potatoes up there when I'm 60. Right. Sure. And so, but that's the name of the game. And that's the price that people will pay. And clearly people are still signing up to play.
Absolutely, man. It's the understood risk that you run by playing the sport, but that's also why it brings in so much money to everything. Think of a lot of these schools, if it wasn't for their football program, who would go there? Like it's a great recruiting tool. Like think of all the basketball coaches that take the players to football games and it's like, oh man, like yeah, you get to experience this every single weekend when you're not in season.
I love Alabama so much. I had a great college experience there. Truly, truly did enjoy it. The amount of people I met at Alabama that I asked them, oh, where are you from? And they were from, California, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, like far reaches of the United States. And every single time it's warm and y'all are good at football. Like the amount of people that go to a school like Alabama, not saying that takes away from what the university is on its own, but without football, you're not getting that.
I'm telling you. And now it's time to give you something valuable here on Jocks. I'd like to introduce you to our friend and wealth advisor, Tad Hill, your trusted retirement planning partner. Tad is also the co-host of the Retire with Freedom radio and TV shows in Birmingham and in Huntsville, and has been designated by Forbes as the #1 financial securities professional in the state of Alabama multiple years running. Now here's Tad Hill to tell you a bit more about Freedom Financial.
What I'd like to do today is talk about something that none of us really like to think about, which is market volatility. And particularly as you near retirement, it's very important that you're not overexposed to risk with too much of your investment money, because for most of you, you're going to need that money to live on. If you've got too much risk in your investments and we go through a big market downturn and you're pulling money out at the same time, now you're having to sell when markets are down to pay your bills. That's called sequence of returns risk. That and the strategies on how to insulate you from that, we cover in our Retire with Freedom course that we do at our office on Valleydale Road. If you would like to attend the next course, we cover that and many other strategies for retirement planning. Text JOCKS at 205-988-0006, 205-988-0006.
This is a paid placement. Investment advisory services are made available through AE Wealth Management. For more information about Forbes rankings, visit Forbes.com.
Welcome back into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian, Conrad, and John holding things down for you. Good conversation there. Talking a little ball. Got to protect the skull, man. Got to keep those Guardian caps on. But Alabama hit the practice field today for a little spring scrimmage. And again, I think the biggest thing that you probably want to hear, one, what the quarterbacks look like. Also, what that defense is going to look like. You got some key pieces returning back, coming back to Alabama. And we saw, of course, like the leadership, year 2 under Kalen DeBoer, Kane Womack, insert Ben Grubb there as the offensive coordinator. But I think that with Coach Grubb coming back, pairing back up with Kalen DeBoer, it's almost like you're getting that second voice on the offense. Like it's almost reinforcing that everything that Kalen DeBoer may or may not was trying to tell you last year, you're getting that quote unquote second opinion of, hey, this is what works. I know I've worked with them. I know what it's supposed to look like. And then defensively tying up a few things with more experience that's coming back. And of course, we know Alabama's going to have talent up and down that roster, but now it's all right. No more Jalen Milroe, guys hitting the transfer portal as far as the receiver position. What does that group look like? Offensive line, how consistent can they be? You're not going to get all of those answered in one day, but at least you'll have a baseline of, all right, where do we need to improve? Who look good? Where do we probably have a few more question marks? But at least you get to see them in live action early on.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it with the quarterbacks. I mean, that's what everyone's going to be asking about. But, for me, offensively outside of that, I'm very interested in what the running game is going to look like for Alabama this year, because we know, you have a lot you're going to have to replace with Jalen Milroe being gone. And so you're going to need to get some of that production back out of the backfield. And with Jam Miller coming back and Richard Young, you got Daniel Hill, you got some of these younger guys, what kind of a role are they going to have? But what you got with Jam. I think Richard Young, for me, I'm very excited to see more of him, because in the limited playing time he got last year, he showed some stuff. Granted, it was at the end of a lot of games, but he's also more of a threat out of the backfield as a passing option. And if you go back to Washington, they relied on their running back. It certainly wasn't a heavy run offense or anything like that, but there were still opportunities to go around, and that was still an important part of what they did offensively. And so that's kind of, I know that's something that a lot of fans, are looking for, is getting back to that ground and pound game sometimes, and what you're going to be able to get out of that running back room. And of course, that also ties into the offensive line. And while you feel good about some spots, and you've got, Caden Proctor coming back and Jaden Roberts coming back, and you and Parker Brailsford, you have question marks with, how far has form become? Who's going to fill in for Booker at guard? Is it going to be Dewberry? Is it going to be Vandermark? Who's going to step up? And what's the depth going to look like? Because again, as we know, it's very important to be 5 strong, but you're also going to have guys are going to go down, whether it's a long-term or short-term thing. Playing the offensive line, you're going to have depth and guys that can rotate in and out. And so how have some of those guys come along? And then, like you said, defensively, it's just you've got a lot of these new these old players that are returning, and some of them that were maybe a little surprising, like LT Overton, guys like that could have gone to the NFL.
Yep.
And what more are you going to get from them? And I know a lot of people are also excited about some of these young guys, especially Dejon Lee, the cornerback, who is, lanky, I guess would be the best way to describe him. But, in all these little Twitter videos and stuff, he's been a prominent figure here early on. So you got these young guys, and we saw last year, a lot of young guys, especially in that secondary, that got opportunities early on, and they were able to do something with it. So you're going to have that again this year with young guys that are ready to step up. And I did also want to mention, if anybody missed the news yesterday, I know this is Damien's favorite topic, recruiting. But yesterday, Alabama did land a commitment from a 5-star cornerback, Jordan Edmonds. He is from Marietta, Georgia, 6'3", 180 pounds. He committed to Alabama yesterday over Georgia, Tennessee, and Oklahoma. So again, doesn't mean anything. These guys change their mind all the time, but certainly a good start of things there for Alabama.
A 6'3" corner.
That'll work.
That'll work.
That'll play.
The coach, Whip Sanderson, coming back up at the top of the hour. Keep it locked on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 9 o'clock here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, John Saber holding things down for old Greg and Cole as they enjoy a little spring break. But this is I feel like this is going to be fun. As we do each and every single Thursday, presented by our friends at Coke and Piggly Wiggly. It's the coach, Wimp Sanderson. All right, Coach. It's Sweet 16.
I'm glad these two goobers are gone.
They didn't want to talk to you, Coach.
I'm glad. Well, because they didn't know anything about they're trying to teach their kids how to shoot a free throw or something. They don't know anything about any basketball. They take off doing the final 16. I mean, Auburn and Alabama. One of them's hung up on Auburn, the other hung up on Alabama. These two goobers, they need to be gone. They don't need you guys are 50 times better than they are anyway.
Man, Coach, we appreciate it. But taking a look at the Sweet 16, take us into it. What kind of pregame, what kind of mindset do you have in a situation like this where you're 1 weekend away, you're one game away from potentially finding yourself in the Final Four, if not the national championship?
Well, the first thing you do is when game number 1 starts and you get in the NCAA tournament, guess what, guys? We're playing so-and-so tonight. Tonight is the championship game. It's not Sunday afternoon, tonight. And so we've got to be ready to play tonight. There are games during your run, Florida and UConn would be one of them, where you just get by. You win that, you have a hard time. It looks like you're going to lose. You're a 1 seed, but you get by that game. That's kind of what Florida has done, I think, when they got by UConn. UConn played them good. Florida's darn good. That guard is Booger Bear. Whew, he shoot it. And so those kind of things happen. But you've got to be every game. I know this goes in one ear and out the other. Every game takes on its own personality, and you've got to be ready to beat the teams you're supposed to be. For example, Auburn's a 9.5-point favorite against Michigan. I'm not going to get on here and argue about the line because I don't know. But I think that you've got to be. Their players can read the paper. We're 9.5 up. I don't believe it's going to be as hard as somebody else. So mentally, and I say this all the time. You guys are not on the show, but mental is to physical like 3 is to 1, because whatever you want to do and are ready to do, you're going to do better. And that's what's so big. All right, now let me tell you what. In the Alabama game, they mirror each other. Both of them are good three-point shooting teams. Both of them are not quite as good defensively. They sort of mirror each other. And Alabama gets points. I got to stop Alabama from dribbling in the paint. I don't want Sears to get in the paint. When Sears gets in the paint on the dribbler, he throws the lob pass. And that big Booger Bear, whatever his name is, he dunks it.
Cliff, yeah.
Yeah. And so then when Sears gets by you, then Damian comes over here and tries to help. I throw the ball to the guy that Damian was guarding. He shoots a 3 and makes it. Now, that's simple stuff, but that's sometimes our listeners don't understand that. And so I've got to guard the dribbler in order to be effective. Now, Alabama's got the offensive boards. They do a good job on it. They got the threes, and they got the fast break. I think BYU is good. I don't think they're as good. So maybe I've talked too much. What else?
No, you're good, Coach. I was going to ask you about, Alabama, and I guess specifically Mark Sears. Do you look at a guy like that who he has really struggled shooting the 3-point shot here for the last 5 or 6 games for Alabama? Do you look at that as a concerning thing moving into this matchup, or do you look at it more of he's just overdue for a good shooting performance, and so eventually that's going to come, whether it's tonight, maybe in the Elite Eight if Alabama's able to win this game? But do you kind of view it that way as, it's going to come around at some point?
Yeah, I'm a little bit old school, but for me, that's a good question. He's 5 for 35. Last 35 times he shot the basketball. He's 5 for 35. I would just say, keep drilling that thing. Maybe just in the last sentence, I might say, be darn sure you got to get a little bit better 3, a better look, just a little bit better look. You're shooting it well. I know what you can do. Just work on it really hard and get you a better three. Now, people's got to help him get a better three. They got to, they got to help him screen people in order for him to get this three. He's a little bit.
You think he's forcing it a little bit, Coach?
A little bit. To me, he might be a step and a half too far out. I'm just guessing. I don't really know for sure, but I think it'll come back to him. I think it'll be a situation where sometimes you go cold a little bit and you just don't. But just be darn. For me and my teams, I would just say, hey, Bill, get you a little bit, get you a better look, and you'll drill him. And once he makes one or two with a better look, then you're a lot better off there.
And Coach, kind of looking at it from the Auburn side of things, with Janai Broome not necessarily having the best 2 games to start off the NCAA tournament, how important do you think it is that he has a quick turnaround, flush it back? The last 2 games or the last 2 games. How quickly do you think that he should be able to turn these things around and expect a bigger game out of him in his matchup with Michigan?
Well, I think you're right. I think he has struggled a little bit. I think he's okay. I don't think he's injured any. They need to get the basketball to him early. If they don't defend him right, he's able to take that shoulder and turn it back to the baseline where he's got that bank shot, to use that little bank board shot there. Then he'll get a bunch of points. I think when I say each game takes on his personality, he's gone through that now. I think he's going to be fine. He's averaging 18.4 a game, something like that. And his field goals are about 50%. Free throws are not great. They're a little bit less than 60, I think. But he to answer your question, he needs to make a timely shot early in the game. I think the one thing Auburn has done is they've made timely threes, or they made timely shots. They made it when they needed. They made it against Tennessee when they were playing Tennessee at Auburn. And so they make timely shots. They're a smart basketball team. They're a basketball team that's not overly. You don't look at their guys on their team. They're not real big stars. Kind of like Alabama signed a bunch of guys. I ain't saying that because I was Alabama. It don't matter to me. That maybe a little bit more recruited, but Auburn was able to get the 5 or 6, 7 guys that sort of fit in. If you'll note, Arkansas got their guys year before last. They didn't fit in, and Muss was 88 and out the gate. He's gone to Southern Cal. They couldn't beat the grandmother. So I think Auburn did a terrific job. You get a guy from Georgia Tech, really? You get a point guard from up in the East nobody knew about down here, really? And they all fit. And to me, that is, you study who you're going to get. And the guys that you get on the team better be as good off the court. They care about each other as they are on the court.
The Coach Wimp Sanderson joining us here as he does each and every Thursday. Thanks to our friends at Coke and Piggly Wiggly. So, Coach, I know when because we have you on 3-Man Front every Friday, and we've talked to you recently about Coach Cal on Fridays. So I just wanted to get your thoughts. Are you surprised to see Arkansas in the Sweet 16?
Oh, am I surprised? The biggest 2 wins in the history of the world. I had a guy call me right before the game and said, "What about this Kentucky-Arkansas?" I said, "Kentucky beat them 20." I said, "Kentucky beat those Booger Bears 20." A guy said, Arkansas can't shoot it. And so Arkansas comes out and shoots the cotton picking the lights out of to start the game like they were really ready to play. They were ready to play. And, it could have been a situation where they went in there and thought, Kentucky, we got Kentucky's old coach, and they go after us, and we ain't go. They were ready to play, and they played great. And then you turn around and go to St. John's. I'm saying to myself, Patino and them will knock them naked and hide their clothes. They'll beat them so bad. And lo and behold, Arkansas played their fannies off. They played smart. They were more ready to play there. I'm not so sure St. John's was quite ready to play. They looked at the record too. But Arkansas, and that's a great question, because I thought it was absolutely the 2 biggest wins anybody had this year, because you take your team back to You take your team back to Kentucky, and everybody hates you, don't like you. You were there enough. You didn't do anything. You didn't do anything good enough. And then you go to play Patina, who everybody thinks is a star, and now he's getting, his best player is 3 for 17, and he's, it's hard to shoot that thing when you're on the bench, and they're on his fanny about that. So he needs sometimes to be on his fanny because he just because he wears a white suit doesn't mean he knows everything.
They got the coach Wes Anderson, presented by our friends at Coke and Piggly Wiggly.
Big fan of Rick Pitino.
He does wear a white suit.
Hey, Coach, just looking at the field of 16, who do you think is the most dangerous team in the tournament right now?
Florida. Everybody else thinks that too, though. Florida. That guard at Florida, great guard. Can he shoot it? The Betsy. I'm telling you right now, the guard at Florida is the best shooting. He's the best shooter of all the 16 teams, that are there, and all the players out there. This guy can shoot the lights out of it, and I'm telling you right now, he's not a guy you look at that's real fancy. He's not going to take it to the basket like Sears does, but he's going to shoot the open shot, and he's going to shoot at the right time. And I'm telling you right now, he made some huge threes. I would say Florida is a little bit. They're on a roll. They are a very good offensive rebounding team. They defend better than they defended last year. They can shoot the lights out of it, and they have gone through the test of UConn, who really knew how to defend them, and gotten by that game. They got by it. Your defensive teams are Houston. It would be your best defensive team. They play Purdue. Purdue is good, and is going to be playing a little bit closer to home. So, Auburn has gotten the home court advantage by going to Atlanta. Boy, what a break that is! Go to Atlanta. Last time I was in the NCAA tournament, they sent me to California, and I had to play out there, and we won 2 games and lost at Loyola Marymount. But going to Atlanta is great for Auburn, and Bruce done a great job of them. So it's going to be. I had somebody call my show today and said, "Well, what if Alabama played Auburn for the national championship?" I said, "And you were coaching them." I said, "I wouldn't be able to get my breath. I'd be so nervous. I couldn't. I don't know what I'd do." So, because when I played Auburn, I was everybody left alone. They all left me alone that week. They didn't want to talk to me.
You got nervous, Coach?
Oh, sure. Was I'm nervous. I was so nervous I couldn't get my breath. I was ready to play. I knew what the game meant to my recruiting. I knew what it meant to the university I was working for, and it was important to me that we get in there and play well. And we played bad down there one time and got beat one of the few times that we did. And guess what we did at 1:00 in the morning? You want to guess? If you don't know, we practiced in the little gym
at 1:00 in the morning.
You got it. With your jockey zone. Yeah. 1:00. Yeah, we practiced. Now, guess what? I go to Little Rock. I have that same thing happen. They passed a rule you could not do that. I didn't know it. I practiced anyway. And then when I got in the 8:00 meeting, I said, "What did you think about the practice last night when we got home?" They said, "Coach, that was illegal." I said, "Illegal?" I said, "Oh crap, nobody's gonna know that, Little Rock."
Keep that one on the. That's awesome, Coach. I did want to ask something from your perspective as the coach. I've seen, I guess, both sides of the argument. I was surprised that so many people seem to have a thought on it one way or the other. But with Alabama, so they started off in Cleveland and then they decided to go directly to Newark. So they haven't been back to Tuscaloosa in quite some time now. So from the coaching perspective, do you think that's the right way to handle it, where you just, you act like it's one long business trip, or do you think it benefits the players to maybe have those couple days back home to kind of reset in between rounds of the tournament?
I think it's fine for them to go. I think you keep your team together. They're going to eat good. They're going to work out. They're going to do what they're going to do up there, what they would do at home. They sent me to California. I'm not going to get into personalities of the administration, but they sent me to California. We opened up against Colorado State. We beat them. Now, the next game we play is against Arizona. And Arizona, a great coach out there. And Arizona was goosing around while I was in there talking to my team, getting ready for the game. We knocked them naked, and we beat the crap out of them. Now, I either got to go back home or I got to stay in California. I selected to stay in California. We were going, it was the Loyola Marymount game where I screwed up. I guess I did. They were averaged 110 points, and we got beat 62-60. Anyway, we lost the game. Would I play like that again? No, because we got beat. But anyway, I think you're better off keeping your team together, eating together, being together, going through stuff. I called every coach that just about had played Loyola Marymount when I did it. I'm glad you asked that question because I did the same thing you did my last year at Alabama. I think it was my last year, maybe next to my last year. And I called Dean Smith, and Dean Smith said to me, "Wimp, you run with those bugbears too much, you'll get blown out." And so I listened. I listened to what they said to me, and so
is that commonplace in the tournament for coaches to kind of exchange that intel?
Well, not all together, but I did. Here, I didn't know I was playing Loyola Marymount, and nobody knew that they were. I mean, they knew they were good, but I didn't know I was going. Yeah, if you're friends, they do. If you.
So it's good to be nice to the other coaches, yeah.
Yeah, if your assistant coaches know the assistants on the other team that play the team that you're fixing to play. Mm-hmm. That really helps you. Hey, Joe, go call Bill and find out what they felt about this. What they do against the zone if you're gonna play them something different. Everything is matchups. How your team matches up man to man. If you play some way, it used to be if a team pressed a lot. Like when I played, this was in the SEC tournament. When I played Arkansas was hard to play because they played so different. Crap, they'd have three guys guarding the ball and the other two guarding the other four. I mean, that's the darndest thing I ever saw. It's hard to play against. So if you play teams that are press and play different, and you haven't gone against presses, you need to know those kinds of things, and you do know them now. Of course, you got the films and all with you and take it with you and all that kind of stuff. But I was away in California and I didn't have any Loyola Marymount films. But Nate and them got plenty of stuff. I've gone around the world to answer that question. But yes, I think it's better to do what they're doing.
Man, Coach, we appreciate this. We appreciate this morning, man. We had some fun.
Well, y'all left me on long. Those other two goobers cut me off. They won't talk something.
Hey, we just wind you up and let you go.
We
Coach.
let you go, man.
They talking about passes and catches and football, all that crap, and offensive linemen and quarterbacks that can't quarterback and all that stuff.
It's March, Coach. We're not talking about offensive line play.
We ain't got time for that.
Well, that's exactly. Y'all a lot smarter than they are. Piggly Wiggly, you go in Piggly Wiggly, you're smart as a whip. Piggly Wiggly has got everything in the world for you. Stanley and I have been friends. He sat on my bench when I was coaching. He runs Piggly Wiggly, and you can get all the products that you want, from good meat to good vegetables. And Coca-Cola is one of my first sponsors when I did a show after our game. So Piggly Wiggly and Coca-Cola afforded me the opportunity to be on your show. I appreciate you guys. Why don't you just tell those other guys take another week off, and we'll talk to you next week.
We'll pass it on to them, Coach. We appreciate you as always, man.
All right.
Thank you, Coach.
Appreciate you, Coach. You have a good one. That's the Coach Wimp Sanderson on the Higginbotham Hotline, presented by our friends at Coke and Piggly Wiggly. You deserve solutions that are built for you. Higginbotham is your one-source solution for insurance, financial, and HR services.
Again, no quick hang-up.
No. Wimp knows. He's a professional. He
enjoyed the conversation.
He did. I like. He knocked him naked, dog.
Yeah, I don't think he's the biggest fan of Rick Pitino. If we're reading between the lines,
just because you got a white suit don't mean nothing. Well, I tell you, man, but that was cool. That was cool. Just talking to Coach, and he's somebody that's very familiar with the Sweet 16, knows about the NCAA tournament. He knows the mindset the teams need to have. We'll continue the conversation of the Sweet 16 as Alabama gets ready to tip off in about 9 or so hours, getting Conrad's mind right as he goes full Crimson Conrad on the other side. Keep it locked right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. $9:24 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian, Conrad, and John having some fun. That was a great interview with Coach Wim Sanderson. Coach is he's a trip. And Michael texted in on the Jocks text line, as you can as well, 205-834-9450. He was telling us to go back and look at that Loyola Marymount team. The game before they played Alabama, they beat Michigan 149-115.
Yeah, and Wim said they lost 62-60 to that team the next week.
Hey,
the next round.
Right. Like, I mean, they did about everything they possibly could. He held them well below their average.
I was about to say defense clearly wasn't
no. God, it's almighty.
A problem, but yeah, that's
149.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Yeah, we had Bobby texting in. He says, "Yeah, that might be the best interview from the coach yet. He came up fired up today, and I love it.
I'm here for it.
We love to see it too." Someone else says, "Let Coach cook." That was great. He was in rare form today. I think he was just,
It's March Madness.
He's excited. Exactly. He's excited just like the rest of us, obviously, to see how Alabama fares, but everyone else in the tournament as well. Glad he doesn't have to watch Rick Pitino anymore, I think. But no, that was awesome. And you know, that'll be at the Jocks FM podcast section a little later this morning if you missed it, because yeah, that was an all-timer from Wimp there.
Absolutely. And then you kind of look at this Alabama BYU matchup. If I had to guess, you give me a gauge of where you are as far as confidence in Alabama going into this matchup. If there was a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Alabama knocks off BYU tonight?
I mean, going in, I'm like a 7.5 or an 8.
Okay.
Like, I feel pretty good. I mean, look, it's a game where, I mean, we've talked about it all week long, but it's just a game where you understand that this is a team that can score with volume. And if you're Alabama, this is not one of those nights where you need to have a bad shooting performance. And if that happens, you'll probably find yourself going home. Granted, we've only seen that a few times this year. Mm-hmm. And based on, you know, the totality of the season, you know, if you're telling me Alabama, you know, needs to get to 85 points to win this game, I feel like they're going to have a pretty good shot to do that, especially when you compare, okay, so we just scored, 82 against the St. Mary's team that hadn't given up 80 or more points in their last 105 games going back 3 or 4 years. Well, if you're telling me you get to do that against a BYU team that is significantly worse defensively than St. Mary's is, BYU 72nd in the country in defensive efficiency, then yeah, I feel really good about the matchup. We know what BYU has. We know, you know, what Saunders can do scoring. I know they shot, you know, lights out against Wisconsin, 45% from 3 in that game. And, you know, that very well could happen again. But Alabama's also a team that when they're firing on all cylinders, they can go out there and shoot 45, 50% from the 3-point line as well. So, yeah, I'm very confident going in. Alabama is the better team. Statistically, on paper, Alabama has the advantage. They match up really well. Again, I can't say this enough. I think this is the easiest matchup that Alabama's had to this point in terms of style of play. Now, quality of opponent, that's a different conversation. I think BYU is the best team that they've played. But in terms of the style that Alabama plays versus the style that BYU plays, I think you're going to find Alabama is in their comfort zone tonight. And if, you know, like going back to what Coach was saying, you know, if you're Mark Sears and you have an opportunity early in this game, you get a good look and you can hit a 3. I think that right there could be the catalyst for a game where you look back and go, oh, wow, yeah, this Alabama team, like, bring on Duke, bring on Arizona, whoever it is in the Elite 8, because, you know, that's kind of the missing piece for them right now. If you can get the Mark Sears, and you don't even need the Mark Sears necessarily that you saw during that stretch where he was scoring just about 30 points a game every single time he was on the floor there for a week or two. Mm-hmm. But if you're getting a Mark Sears that's shooting 35% from 3, he's getting to the free throw line, which he's so good at doing. He's attacking the basket, and he's continuing, to pass the ball and facilitate to the rest of the guys. I think that paves the way for Alabama to be scoring in the 90s or even get into triple figures for the 9th time this year and walk away with a victory. So, yeah, I mean, I feel really good. I got the beanie on all day today, so I'm ready to rock.
Think we get another Grant Nelson game?
Toboggan. Someone's going to say it's not a beat, it's a toboggan.
Same thing. You think we get another Grant Nelson game here in the Sweet 16 like we did last year?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not quite on the same level. I would certainly love to see it. I think Grant Nelson's going to have a big game. I think what you saw from him against St. Mary's, knowing that he's banged up, and even going back to the Robert Morris game, and I understand that was not a game where you probably wanted to have to put Grant into the game. You were looking at that going in as, oh, we should easily be able to handle this, let him rest up. But for him to essentially go up to Coach Oates and say, hey, you're going to put me in this game, like, it doesn't matter if I'm healthy for the next game if we're going home. So, you know, seeing that and that attitude, and then what you got from him against St. Mary's, where I thought he played, you know, he didn't, you know, his stats maybe didn't jump out of the score sheet. You know, he didn't have 25 points or anything like that, but all around, he was aggressive attacking the basket. He was big getting rebounds. That's what you need from Grant Nelson, and I think you're going to see more of that. I think another big question for Alabama is just, what are you going to get? You know, because we talked about the first round or the first 2 rounds, you know, it was kind of Lob City, right? Like, you saw something from the Alabama offense that you haven't seen a ton this year, which was an emphasis on getting the ball to Cliff Amore. And he's had games this year where you've seen that. But, I mean, he had, a dozen alley-oops, I think, in the first round, or the first two games of the first weekend. So is that a style that you're going to go back to again? Or do you view that as somewhere where you can exploit what BYU brings to the table and you're going to attack them in the paint? Or are you going to get back to, again, the outside shot, since you are playing a matchup now where maybe that's a little more favorable for you? But certainly, everything going in, if you're an Alabama fan like me, I don't see why you wouldn't be confident going into this matchup.
Yeah.
You are the better team.
Right.
Statistically speaking, you are better offensively. You are better defensively. You have a more talented roster. You have a better coach who is more experienced. Everything essentially points to Alabama and then being able to take care of business tonight.
Yeah, and I am an Alabama fan like you. Roll Tide. Me and you've been rocking with Alabama basketball for how long now?
5, 6, 3 weeks.
29 years.
At least 3 weeks.
For a while.
Maybe even a month.
Yeah, man. Me and we've been singing Alabama's praises for a long time, man. Roll Tide, roll. Ain't that right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what shirt you wear on Monday?
Where'd that confidence go?
Yeah, what shirt was that on Monday? Oh, no, I'm confident in my team that I root for and the university that I attended and the school that I've rooted for my entire life.
Hey, and absolutely. Yeah, as you should.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said Roll Tide. I thought that's what y'all do. Y'all say it back, right? Roll Tide. Is your mic not working or something?
No, it's just, there's false prophets and, we don't want to go down into that territory. So
it's all good. We'll continue on the other side with your text messages, your calls, 205-834-9450. Keep it locked on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. # War Eagle.
Welcome back in to McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell, John Saber here with you. We'll be back tomorrow. Greg and Cole back on Monday, enjoying a little bit of time off for spring break. We've been talking a lot about the Sweet 16 kicking off tonight. Alabama going to lead us off at 6:09 tip time there on CBS as they take on 6-seed BYU. Following that at 6:39 over on TBS, you're going to have another SEC team, the number 1 seed Florida Gators, taking on Maryland, the 4 seed coming off of their buzzer beater, that thrilling win they had over Colorado State the past weekend. Then you're going to have at 8:39. Well, I guess now we're back in the fun time where, depending on what time the Alabama BYU games, that might dictate what time Arizona and Duke are ultimately able to tip off in terms of, having to get the court ready and things like that. But as it's scheduled, 8:39 tip on CBS, you're going to have 4-seed Arizona taking on 1-seed Duke. And then at 9:09, the late tip on TBS, you're going to have another SEC team in action as the 10-seed, the Cinderella of the dance, Arkansas, taking on the 3-seed Texas Tech. Of course, Auburn's going to do their battle with Michigan tomorrow. So 4 games tonight, 4 games tomorrow. We've officially made it to the Sweet 16. And we have a couple of people who are continuing to chime in with some of their thoughts on the matchup. On the text line, 205-834-9450, someone chimes in. They say, when you consider what Alabama did offensively against St. Mary's, I think Bama could be primed for a nice run, starting to get hot at the right time. And yeah, I mean, when you look at 82 points, maybe that doesn't, isn't eye-opening based on some of the numbers we have seen from Alabama, Damian, but going up against that kind of defense and knowing that was the first time in over 100 games that St. Mary's had allowed a team to score over 80 points. When, you look at BYU and you go, man, if we scored 82 on St. Mary's, how high could that number get tonight against BYU?
Yeah, and I think for Alabama, if you are starting to hit that, like, I guess you'd say, important stride this late into the season, you got to be feeling confident. And like kind of something that you said earlier, if, okay, yeah, you handle your business against BYU and you look like the complete unit that you're attesting, like you're pretty much expecting to be, bring on Duke, bring on Arizona. Like, the confidence is just going to continue to grow the better that you perform. And at this point, it's just survive and advance. And I think for Alabama, what you saw against St. Mary's, a couple of threes were falling, and the contribution from the other guys, the other pieces to the level where there were multiple guys with double figures, you're like, okay, this could be something that we can start to build on. And the confidence continues to grow game by game. And it starts with BYU to the point, like you said, they're worse defensively than St. Mary's is. And the odds kind of tell you that you should be able to score a few more points than you even did against St. Mary's.
Ranger texts in. He says, man, y'all are on a roll with the extra airtime, and Wimp went scorched earth. Truly a best of. Keep it up, guys. Appreciate the kind words there, Ranger. The suit, Ryan Haney, he texted in. He says, high tide, Conrad. So, this is what you look for in life. You want a boss that supports your dreams. And my dreams are for Alabama to win a national championship. And I appreciate our boss and supporting me in my dreams.
Hold on, you want your dream. So your dream is for Alabama to win a national championship and win the event that you have Alabama in a chance to win a national championship with Florida.
Well, yeah, that's why it's a dream.
I got you.
A lot of people's dreams are to be Batman. I mean, you ain't out here wearing no suit and, fighting criminals in the night.
Exactly.
I
just appreciate it. It's okay. You can go.
Your dream, I assume, is to have Florida Georgia line play together still, but
I was about to say
that ain't happening. That nightmare is not happening.
You can go talk to Ryan about that after this. Go tell Ryan your dreams, and we'll see if he can make them come true. I just wanted to say I appreciate our boss for caring about what my dreams are of Alabama winning a national championship in basketball. Mailman, he texted in earlier to the show. He says, my prediction for the game tonight, Alabama wins 70-55. Referees are going to call a tight game tonight.
Oh, low scoring affair.
70-55 would not, that would be surprising.
Yeah. And that's a lot of hard hat material on the defense. That means Alabama's defensive efforts stepped up. And you'd appreciate it.
Yeah, you'd probably also look at the 70 and go, all right, what went wrong there in terms of, did we turn the ball over a lot? Were we not shooting the ball well? Whatever it may be. But that's Mailman's prediction. Alabama 70, BYU 55. Somebody else texted in. This is very confusing. So his last text said WDE, and now his text today says the under is golden for Alabama BYU RTR.
So Damien texted in?
No,
Yeah, I'm assuming
Okay.
this is Damien's
It's not my
burner
number.
phone because
that is not my number.
I'm just confused how we got WDE last text and this text is RTR.
Nope. No, he's just confused.
Maybe it's just a combination. Maybe it's the first Alabama and Auburn fan.
Sounds painful.
I can't imagine that. That sounds like an awful existence. But hey, if that's what floats your boat, then so be it. But yeah, Alabama, they will tip off in, let me do the math real quick, 8 hours and 27 minutes.
That sounds about right.
So something certainly to look forward to there. But if you have final score predictions, we got a lot of them this morning on Morning Jogs. But if you want to send in new ones, maybe your mind's changed. Maybe you're just now tuning in. But if you have a score prediction for Alabama and BYU tonight, please send them in 205-834-9450. We're going to give our predictions before the end of the show, what we think is going to happen, not only for Alabama, BYU, but the other Sweet 16 games that you have coming up tonight as well. And also don't forget MLB opening day. So best of luck to whoever your team is, because for today, at least, we all have a chance.
And speaking of MLB, the MVP odds show Aaron Judge is leading the charge in the AL right now. Do you think he can go back to back?
Yeah, he's won 2 of the last 3.
What, games?
Hey, he did get hurt last year, but
He missed the chunk.
No, that was 2 years ago. He missed a little bit of time.
Yeah.
He missed a little bit of time last year. 2 years ago is when he broke his foot at Dodger Stadium because of their ancient architecture that I'm sure Greg McElroy loves so much.
That's why they win championships.
Yeah, it destroyed his foot.
He's at plus 300, also tied with Bobby Witt Jr. of the Kansas City Royals.
That's who everyone, if you look at the expert predictions, everyone has Bobby Witt, who was the runner-up to Aaron Judge last year.
And then Gunnar Henderson for the Baltimore Orioles.
From
Plus
Alabama.
You better believe it.
From the state of Alabama.
Yeah. And on the NL, of course, Shohei Ohtani leads the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's not. Yeah, and then that Trader's probably in second.
You talking about old Juan Soto?
Yeah, the Trader, yes.
You ain't a big fan of him anymore?
No.
But he's chasing the bag, though, bro. It's like the transfer portal. He's chasing that money.
$700 million, a history of championships, tradition, being the team that people in your city actually care about. Blue and orange. I'm just saying, maybe there's a correlation here. Blue and orange jersey.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about your organization. Perennial disappointment. But yeah, $20 more million. I'm just saying, when you're getting paid that much money,
Does it really matter?
would you not rather go somewhere where you... I'm just saying, maybe the Mets win the World Series and I'm wrong, but for now, he's a trader.
Okay.
And that's fine. I'm sure that's how Braves fans felt about Freddie Freeman.
Well, they kind of, I'll say his agent kind of messed that one up.
Perhaps.
And I will say
Messed
this.
up. Didn't he get a ring? And more money?
True.
Okay.
And some new teeth.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you glow up and then you messed up. Okay. All right.
I'm just saying. And then they gave him like the only thing, like when Freddie Freeman came back to Atlanta, they essentially made it the Freddie Freeman weekend for him.
Yes.
Like they just, like I get it. Like when the person leaves your team, you have like the video tribute, whatever. But it felt like the entire weekend it was, oh my God, Freddie, we miss you so much. Like, would you please come back? And he's like,
well, and I think the thing with Freddie Freeman too is, with a lot of these situations with guys returning, it's about, that one player maybe, as opposed to, with Freddie Freeman, and this is a credit to him, but it was his whole family, right? And his wife, Chelsea, and their kids. And that was such a big part of Freddie Freeman and kind of his personality and the bond with the team. And it's just, you got, from the outside looking in, you got to see all of that. And so I guess more so for Braves fans, it felt like maybe you were losing more than just one player because his family had become such a big part of his time in Atlanta. Whereas with a lot of these guys like Soto, for example, I mean, it's just, I'm bitter about him. You're not thinking about the other,
Yeah.
That's just my 2 cents, but I don't know. Maybe Landrum has a different answer to that because he's still not over it.
He also doesn't have a tattoo like he's supposed to. So
yeah, we're supposed to not. I think that's only on 3-man front that we're not allowed to talk about it. Yeah, so we can definitely talk about it on the show.
I was there. I seen it.
Yeah.
when is it supposed to happen?
We have the audio somewhere.
Or will it ever happen?
No.
But they make you smell.
Smelled?
Yeah, they make you smell and eat and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
but he can't get the tattoo.
Well, I take one for the team. I'm a good team player.
Okay.
Just ignoring the fact that Landrum did a couple of interviews eating a raw can of chili.
That is nasty.
But nothing beats what you had. And also, I didn't know that you have to do it again. Is that serious? Like, are they serious that you
I'm
really
not
have to?
doing that again.
Because, dog, like,
I'm not doing
I cannot.
No.
There isn't a smell worse.
It was bad.
And, like, that was just a piece of the can. Actually, the word Pat used yesterday, you didn't penetrate the can enough. So that's why they said that you have to open it all the way up.
When the Braves win the World Series, you will have a Chief Nakahoma tattoo on your right butt cheek. That's what you just said on the radio.
Okay, well, that's fine. It'll be between us.
I knew we had that somewhere. I knew we had that.
Tape don't lie.
I hope Landrum's listening down the hallway.
You know he is. And they're going to press the issue. I think like the 3-man front listeners, they do a good job of holding. Every time they see Landrum or talk to Landrum, like, so when are you going to get the tattoo?
It's just our job to remind everybody, and then, the listeners can do with that what they will.
I mean, to be fair, Landrum also said this.
No, I did hear 2 owls mating the other night.
Okay.
That's your homeboy, too.
Listen, man. It's kind of like, being in the locker room. I don't know what you do outside of these walls. It's up to you. But sometimes you might just need to keep that over there. Like, I don't think the world needed to know that you heard that. That's your homeboy, Conrad.
Conrad didn't go to his house and watch Christmas Vacation.
True.
That is true. There's a theme here of all the people that Damian tells other people, oh, that's your homeboy. It's all people that he has spent.
Correct, right.
Landrum, Don.
It's like when they're together, oh, it's nothing, but then leave, and it's almost like certain NFL franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Stop.
Okay.
Stop.
You play a little Golden Tee while you're over there?
No.
No, you didn't? Okay.
No, we
Maybe
just
next time.
watched the movie.
Maybe next time. Well, we got a few more minutes to go here. Again, you can continue to send in your score predictions, 205-834-9450. When we come back, we'll put a bow on things, read your text, and Damian and I will give our predictions for the Sweet 16 games tonight. You're listening to McElroy and Cubelic in the morning right here on Jocks 94.5.
9:52 here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and John Saber having some fun with you. We'll be back tomorrow as Greg and Cole come back on Monday. Should be very well relaxed and rested. Maybe G-Mac. I don't know about Cole because Cole's literally going from Disney to DC to call the Stallions and DC Defenders game. And he's going to be back on Monday. So it's not much of a break in the spring break edition for old Cole.
No, but it'll be a great Monday. We'll have a lot to break down
because Auburn and Alabama will be in the Final Four. Ain't that right?
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, roll
along
Tide
with Tennessee / Kentucky and Florida. Right?
Roll Tide.
Yep.
All right. See, I'm solo dolo on this, but hashtag War Eagle.
Thank you.
The media, I tell you. God,
those media narratives.
Hashtag Roll Tide, hashtag War Eagle, hashtag Go Balls, hashtag Hook 'em, hashtag Dogs, hashtag Hottie Toddy, hashtag Go Tigers, and hashtag Gators.
I'm just losing track.
But you know what you didn't hear? The one with the overalls.
Gig 'em?
Yeah. You ain't ever going to hear me say that.
I mean, I didn't hear Go Doors either, but.
Well, that's before Diego. I said that before Diego Pavia was at Vanderbilt.
So you did say all this. Okay.
Oh, so you're only rooting for teams that are good.
No. I got a cowbell, so I'm rocking with Mississippi State still.
I didn't hear you ring that a lot last year.
No, because they struggled. They struggled.
Yeah,
but
you're only furthering.
I'm never in proximity to my cowbell. That's the only reason you don't hear me ringing it at times.
I'm about 10 feet away in there. You could walk right in there and grab it.
And then I have to get in John's personal space.
I don't
crawl over and just ring it. I just want to make sure.
Sure, you could nicely ask him to pass it.
You go get coffee with 8 seconds left in a break. Yet you can't walk.
I wasn't going to go there, but
okay,
All
right.
Why are they doing me like this, man?
I wasn't going to go there, but Saber did. So that's perfectly fine. But 205-834-9450. Appreciate all of you chiming in throughout the show. But before we do that, Damian, tell them about our friends over there at Train.
Yeah, for flu, pollen, and allergy season, keep your home cleaner with Train's Clean Effects Home Air Cleaner. It removes up to 99.9% of airborne particles, including those contributing to allergy and virus. It's proven more effective than standard and HEPA air filters. Contact a Train certified dealer for the Clean Effects Air Cleaner.
All right, we have Tate texting in, and this is the same person who texted in earlier with some say it with your chest about the Alabama fan that was worried about the BYU game and how, Alabama fans should never be scared, all that good stuff. So he says, Conrad, don't do the fish challenge again unless Landrum gets that tattoo. That's your bargaining chip. Don't bend, break, or fold. Stand on business. Don't be scared like Alabama fans are.
Whoa.
He just had to throw that in.
Yeah, that's a plot twist at the end.
Let's see. We have somebody who texted in that they have... Oh, these are their picks for the weekend. So they have Duke -8, Texas Tech -4, Michigan State -2, Kentucky money line. They have Michigan covering the 11 versus Auburn. And they have Purdue covering the 10 versus Houston.
Doesn't look like too bad of a parlay.
So there you go. There's a little bit of action there. Let's see. Here we go. Mike texted in from Louisiana. He says, I'm with you, Conrad. I've been a Yankees fan since I was 6 years old, sitting on my dad's lap watching the baseball game of the week. It was literally the only game on each week at 1 o'clock on Saturdays. I'm 63 now, so I've seen some championships and some bad seasons. Appreciate you. I appreciate you doing that. See, and here, someone's got my back. Good for you, Conrad. No false roll tides. That's more of an Auburn thing. They're into rituals and mysticism and miracles and trees and eagles and all that stuff.
Oh, that voodoo. I've got Alabama, Florida, Duke. No, excuse me. I've got Alabama, Florida, Arizona, and Arkansas tonight.
I am going to go the same, actually. We're both picking Arizona to upset Duke. Stick with the gut. Filling out the bracket initially. I've got Alabama tonight, 91-84. You have a score?
Yeah, I'll say 92-83.
Saber, you have a thought on the game tonight?
Yeah, I probably won't make the second parts of doubleheaders. That's some late tips.
Okay.
I'm getting old.
There are some late tips, so get a nap in, whatever you need to do before the games. But 6:09 p.m., Alabama and BYU doing battle in the Sweet 16. Three-man front is next.